Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. And today, that is First Horizon Park, where the Nashville Sounds are taking on the Norfolk Tides. Today at 6:35. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Okay, so I want to start with this. Titan fans are not going to like this, but, you know, at some point, it just is what it is. So add Pro Football Focus to the list of people who think, quite frankly, you reached in the NFL draft. Mel Kiper Jr. thinks you reached. He gave you a C+. The Athletic thinks you reached. They gave you the 26th best class ranking. Matt Miller at ESPN said that you had the worst draft class, according to him. The worst draft class. And Sports Illustrated says one of the four worst, with Atlanta, Denver, Carolina, and, of course, you. And now PFF says you had two of the biggest reaches, starting with J.C. Latham. Pro Football Focus says there was some buzz that Latham would be the Chargers pick at number 5, which would have made him the first tackle off the board. However, that was ultimately a smokescreen, as the Chargers went with the consensus top tackle in Joe Alt. Still, the idea of Latham would go much higher than expected turned out to be true, as the Titans selected the Alabama prospect at number 7 overall. While Latham put up a quality 81.9 PFF grade last year, he was OT5, aka tackle number 5, on the PFF big board and the 18th ranked player overall. Tackles such as Thalise Fuaga, Olu Fashanu, and Troy Fautanu were still available and ranked higher than Latham on the big board. Go down to day 2. Ian, you'll never guess what the number 1 reach of day 2, according to Pro Football Focus, was.
I wonder.
T'Vondre Sweat of the Tennessee Titans. Pro Football Focus says Sweat was a candidate to slide down the board heading into the night. While he already had concerns over his weight, he played at around 360 pounds, and conditioning, he was arrested and charged with driving while intoxicated 3 weeks before the draft. Yet, the 122nd player on PFF's big board was selected 38th overall. Sweat is a space eater, but 38th felt very rich for him. Now, I already know. I haven't looked at the text line. I already know what it's going to say. You're going to say, Jared, we want you to be positive about the draft. That's the first thing. The second thing that it wouldn't surprise me if I saw in the text line was, who cares what all these people have to say? Mel Kiper Jr. and Matt Miller and Pro Football Focus and Dane Brugler and Sports Illustrated, and who cares what they have to say? And I get it. I mean, I hope the Titans draft works out as well as it possibly could. I hope all these guys are gold jacket Hall of Famers. I hope that this is like the Dan Shaughnessy column in the Boston Globe, the day that the Patriots hired Bill Belichick, that I believe, like, the headline in the Boston Globe was, Patriots will rue the day that they decided to bring in Bill Belichick, which obviously they did not. But here's the problem that I have. I have the problem with people that are unwilling to admit reality. See, I like the T'Vondre Sweat pick, even though I think they reached. Like, I see why the Titans drafted T'Vondre Sweat. That doesn't mean that they didn't reach. Now, the Titans are not the only team that drafts for need or says, oh, we're going to take this guy because we think he fits us, and that's what the good teams do. I doubt that Kansas City had Xavier Worthy as the best player on their board when they traded up to get him, but they probably said that Xavier Worthy is exactly what we need. He's exactly the fit that we think would be best for Patrick Mahomes. I said when they took T'Vondre Sweat at 38, I said that feels like a very San Francisco 49er-like move, where San Francisco's sitting there on the board and, well, everybody else thinks this guy is, really the 113th best player, and we're picking at 93, but we think he fits what we want to do, so let's take him. The problem is that that's what the good teams do, because the good teams don't need the foundational players that turn you from a bad team to a good team. San Francisco has the foundational players. You want to know how San Francisco got probably their best, their most foundational piece, in my opinion. San Francisco got their best and most foundational piece because Arizona took a quarterback number 1 in 2019 and they got the best player, Nick Bosa. That's a foundational piece. The other foundational pieces, they traded for Christian McCaffrey. They traded for Trent Williams. They didn't overdraft Brandon Ayuk. They got lucky on some picks where they hit on day 3 guys like Fred Warner, George Kittle. And with that, it's allowed them to do a couple of things. 1, draft squarely for need, which they're able to do. 2, trade away draft picks, which they've done a lot of. It's a lot easier when you're trading away the 32nd pick than it is when you're trading away the 3rd pick in a draft. But it's also allowed them to miss. San Francisco has the biggest miss in the draft over the last 10 years by trading 3 first-round picks to get to number 3 for a quarterback who never played meaningful football for. You are not San Francisco. You are not Kansas City. Your roster, you're the ones that tell me your roster's not at that point that says, oh, well, Jared, we need to not spend money ahead of free agency because we don't know what we have in a quarterback, but the Texans know what they have in a quarterback. And again, those are excuses. You want to believe something because you thought the Titans weren't going to spend money. Then the Titans spent money. You all were happy. But the one thing that I will not stand for, that I feel like is starting to happen, is this idea that the Titans didn't reach. I don't care who Bill Callahan's favorite player was. Again, the board is supposed to be made up of NFL standards, which means that you're expected to rank the players appropriately. And then if somebody does something stupid, like takes the 53rd pick at 19, then that's a good thing because that means that the 19th player is probably going to fall further in the draft. But you've got to figure out what the rest of the league's going to do. You got to rank these players appropriately. And you can't just rank them and say, oh, well, Bill Callahan likes him, so let's take him. That's bad drafting. You can't just say, well, I like him, so I want to take him. That's not how Jimmy Johnson built the Cowboys. Jimmy Johnson built the Cowboys by saying, okay, we can move to this spot in order to get Emmitt Smith. Not, we got to take him no matter what. And I find it to be incredibly disingenuous for Titan fans on one hand to say, well, I don't care what anybody says about my picks, my team. They're the ones that think that my picks are good. Well, Atlanta thinks that their pick of Michael Penix was good. And we all know Atlanta drafting Michael Penix in the first round was incredibly stupid after giving Kirk Cousins the contract they gave him. So if you're going to sit there and say, well, it doesn't matter what Mel Kiper Jr. thinks, it doesn't matter what The Athletic thinks, it doesn't matter what Matt Miller thinks, it doesn't matter what Pro Football Focus thinks, it doesn't matter what Sports Illustrated thinks, it doesn't matter what anybody except for anybody that I want to hear who's going to say something good about my team, it doesn't matter what any of these people think, then you're not living in reality. You're the same people that said that, hey, we drafted Caleb Farley, Jared. He's going to be a perfect fit for us. Caleb Farley is going to be such a good pick for us. We got the best corner with the 21st pick. And then 3 years later, you're yelling and screaming to fire the GM. That's what happens. I think the only problem with the reaching is, A, you could have gotten better players. But more importantly, I think where I really don't like the reaching, because if you think J.C. Latham's the perfect guy for you, that's great. But if J.C. Latham's the 14th best player in this draft, you trade down. That's what you do. If you think Tavondre Sweat is, before the DWI, the 35th best player in this draft, and then you say, okay, well, let's evaluate the DWI, and that drops him down to the 50th best player because even though this guy one nudge below Tavondre Sweat has a 6.44 grade and Sweat has a 6.45 grade, you still move him up because the DWI gives you a level, and the weight and everything else gives you a level of concern. of like, hey, this pick may not work out. Why may it not work out? Is it because he's not a good player? No, he's a good player, but he may be too fat. Like he may be too lazy. I was watching an old NFL draft on YouTube. Ian, I've kind of gotten into this of like watching random stuff on YouTube.
Sure.
And the 2002 NFL draft was on YouTube. And so I kind of watched the beginning of it. And then I fast forwarded, after the Texans took David Carr, I fast forwarded to when the Titans picked. And the Titans were at 14. And there were two players on the board, defensive players they really liked, supposedly. Philip Buchanan, the corner out of Miami, and Albert Hainsworth, the defensive tackle out of Tennessee. The Giants were desperate at 15 to draft Jeremy Shockey. And the word on the street was Seattle at 20 wanted Jeremy Shockey too. So the Tennessee Titans made a trade with the Giants. They traded down one spot, picked up a 4th-round pick, and drafted Albert Hainsworth. That's good GMing. That's not reaching. And my favorite part was when the desk crew was breaking down the Titans pick of Albert Hainsworth, Chris Mortensen, may he rest in peace, said at the time he would have gone higher, but NFL teams have concerns that he's lazy. And you want to know what Albert Hainsworth's biggest problem as an NFL player was? The only reason that he doesn't have a gold jacket, in my opinion, Ian, is what?
I don't know, discipline?
He was lazy. He got the bag. He got the bag in Washington, and all of a sudden, he was fat. He didn't want to play there. He didn't want it. Exactly. Couldn't pass the conditioning test. So you guys can sit here, and I understand everybody wants to be excited. And again, I don't hate the T'Vondre Sweat player. Like, I don't hate that player. But when everybody is telling you that you reached, it means you reached. There's no way around it. It's reality. And so let's just face it. Let's just say, okay, this is how the Titans are going to do it. And let's see. Just like if I was an Atlanta Falcon fan, I'd probably be thinking to myself, well, we had the 8th pick in the draft and we got a $150 million quarterback or whatever it is. But let's see with Michael Penix, who knows? So that's how we're starting today. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And I get that Bill Callahan likes J.C. Latham. That is the thing that everybody, wants to make a big deal about with J.C. Latham. I get it. But I do wonder, who made the pick? And then we got to talk about something Rand said, because apparently it's something that Rand said before and said before. So we'll get to that as well. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025, live out at First Horizon Park here on the program. Let's talk about FanDuel Sportsbook. The road to the NBA Finals starts now, and new customers on FanDuel can go on their own playoff run with $150. Just place any $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, to use during the NBA playoffs. They've got options like 3-pointers made in a game, over-under point total, first basket scorer, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM to get started. That's FanDuel.com/JGM. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 and over in Present, Tennessee. First online real money wager, only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issues, non-withdrawable bonus bets expire 7 days after receipts. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
lot of deals made in the first 10, 12 picks of the second round. How much action were you getting? How much consideration did you give?
Tons of calls. We up until when we walked up here at 4 o'clock with JC, we had about 8, 9 calls, 8, 9 offers for the pick, and we were fielding the calls, listening. But one thing we talked about was, let's see how this board shakes out. We knew there was going to be an early run on receivers, and we knew that with the defensive tackles that were right there, it was only a matter of time of when that run happened, and you knew that there was going to be a run on the corners right there. And so the receiver run happened early, like we thought, and then as soon as I think it was Washington traded into the pick and took Johnny Newton, we knew that run was going to happen, and it's just the way the board took shape.
It's probably important to note too that it's just because there's phone calls doesn't mean that they're good deals, doesn't mean that they fit for us. Some of these calls and some of these trades, you're dropping down a significant level of player when you start dropping deep into the second, and sometimes the reciprocal value isn't there because everyone thinks that they can try to pull one over and get a deal, and that's not how it works. So there's a cost of doing business, and when you want to come up that high, there's things that are required, and some teams meet it, some teams don't. But I think there was just a world of player that we weren't quite ready to dip out of.
So there you go. That was Brian Callahan, Rand Carthon talking on Friday about why they decided, we're not going to trade the 38th pick and we're going to take T'Vondre Sweat, which, by the way, has led to everybody saying, boy, that was a reach. Charles Robinson today said that he thought it was a reach, from what he had heard, and that some teams had kind of moved Sweat to what's called the sub board, which is kind of the secondary board that's like, okay, once we get past the premium picks, then if that guy's still there, that's where the risk and the reward, we cut a 5th round pick, who cares? But that's where teams had moved T'Vondre Sweat. But Rand Carthon went on the other radio station, 104.5, and he said that, hey, I was told by a GM that they would have taken T'Vondre Sweat. Justification for his pick. And I said a couple days ago, I said, I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I need proof. Who's the GM here? And boy, people got mad at me. Oh my God. The text line was like, they're calling Rand a liar. I'm like, well, I'm just saying I don't believe it. I'm not saying that I have proof that it's not true. I'm just saying that I don't believe it. It's awfully convenient that, oh, yes, this pick that everybody says that I overreached on actually was a good pick because my girlfriend who goes to another high school who you guys haven't met yet, she said it was a good pick. I have a hard time with that. And somebody texted into the text line. A lot of people texted the text line that day mad. One guy texted and said, you've gone too far. I'm texting your bosses right now. I'm like, my bosses listen to the radio show. But somebody texted in and said, Rand said the same thing last year about Colton Dowell. And I said, I have no recollection of that. And honestly, that was kind of the end of it for me. That was on Tuesday. And yesterday, I got to give credit where credit's due. Dustin in Nashville texted in the YouTube videos of the interviews. We can't play the cuts because, again, it was on another radio station. But Ian, you have heard the audio and you have seen what, the quotes, and you can vouch that this is legit.
That is correct.
Okay. Rand said about T'Vondre Sweat, quote, I promise that in everything we do, we're well-researched. What people don't see is the text messages and calls you get from the team after you take their guy. And how many texts and calls were, we're taking him with our next pick or great pick. I had earmarked on the board, this is the furthest we could go back and still get this caliber. And even with that, one of the teams that I had earmarked that we could go below to get him texted after the draft and said, we would have taken him if he was there. So we would have missed out. That's the quote that I don't believe. And that people got mad when I said, I just don't believe that a GM texted, oh, we would have taken him, Rand, good pick. On the same radio station, in an interview, when asked about Peter Skoronski last year, quote, it was cool to get texts from buddies from teams in your area. And I think when he's talking about area, he's talking about area in the draft. It was cool to get texts from buddies of your teams in your area saying, oh, that was our guy. Had this person not been there, we were going to take Skoronski. In another interview On Colton Dowell, he said, quote, "You know, I got 6 texts. I'll say 6 texts and phone calls from teams around the league saying either A, that was the guy our head coach coveted, or that guy that they were going to take him in the 7th. So it just shows that he was well thought of." So this is basically the same story every time. Take Skoronski. Wasn't an overly controversial pick, but he takes Skoronski and says, "Oh, I got texts from teams saying they all wanted to take him." Takes Colton Dowell. "I got texts from teams saying, oh, our coach loved him," or "oh, we were going to take him." I got a text on Tavondre Sweat saying, "Oh, that was our guy. We were going to pick him." And it was a team that picked before I even thought we could trade back to get him. That's convenient. The same story every time. The same story for Tavondre Sweat. The same story for Colton Dowell. The same story for Peter Skoronski. And now you guys see why I don't like being bullcrapped. And people will say, "Jared, you hate Rand." And that's not true, because personally, I don't know Rand Carthon. But here's what I do hate. I do hate the general manager of the football team that I root for making decisions and then bullcrapping his way around it. That's what I don't like. I don't like the ball didn't bounce our way when everybody watched the season that they played. I don't like, this is like my first draft, when it is not. It is your second. And so when I say things like, man, again, this was Dustin in Nashville that pointed this out, that Rand uses the same story every time. I'm like, wow. The audacity to think that, I'll just go on and tell the same story every time. Somebody questions my pick at all, and I'll just say, well, my imaginary GM over here texted me and said he would have taken him. So screw literally everybody who says that I reached on Tavondre Sweat, because that is what has happened. And I got to be honest, Ian, have you seen anybody come out and say, that was a good pick at 38 of Tavondre Sweat publicly? And I'm not talking about other GMs or anything. I'm talking about draft analysts and gurus and things like that.
I think there's been some people who have said that Sweat had played maybe well enough to flash at 38, but some of the concerns had dropped him.
So
it's
there's
pretty much the
nobody that's like,
consensus.
good pick.
I don't
And
know.
that's what we're being told. We're being told that the league was saying good pick by, again, I don't know for a fact that it's an imaginary GM that Rand says is texting him, but I feel pretty certain that it's an imaginary GM. Just like I feel pretty certain it was an imaginary head coach that coveted Colton Dowell in the 7th round, or that it was an imaginary 6 teams in the area of where the Titans took Skoronski that called Rand and said, oh, we would have taken him. And I got to ask too, if Rand's getting congratulated by all these teams every time the Titans make a pick, how do these other teams have the time to get their picks in? Too busy texting the Titans. So this is what I'm talking about when it comes to the Titans, but more importantly to Rand. And people say, Jared, you don't like Rand. I don't know Rand. I've interviewed him once. I've been to his press conferences like 4 times. At least the ones that they email out and say ahead of time he's having. But what I don't like is I don't like just the steady stream of bullcrap, which is what it is. And see, for me, I'll never forget during the Butch Jones era, Tennessee played a game at Texas A&M. They were both, I think, undefeated. I think they were both ranked in the top 10, and Tennessee turned the ball over like 5 times. And they ended up losing in overtime. And Butch Jones, after the game, was talking about, well, if we turned the ball over 5 times, just think about how well we played that we went to overtime with turning it over 5 times. And I was like, oh, my God. Okay. And we were in a commercial break, and I looked at Floyd, and I said, you don't like Butch Jones, do you? And Floyd was looking out the window, and he just goes, Butch isn't really my kind of guy, which I interpreted as Butch is full of it. And again, I like the football guys that are about football. That's what I like. What I don't like is I don't like the bull crap. And there are too many guys in the NFL, and probably all sports, but especially the NFL, that are really just kind of full of it. And so when you tell me that you justify this pick that everybody is slamming you for by saying, oh, well, I got a text from a GM, I'm going to need proof in order to believe that. And then when it's the same story you said about Colton Dowell, the same story you said about Skoronski, it makes it really, really hard for me to believe. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 6 teams did reach out when the Titans picked Skoronski. Maybe there were teams that head coach coveted Colton Dowell. And maybe there was a GM who wanted to draft Tavondre Sweat at 44. But seems a little fishy. 615-737-1025. We'll go to your phone. 615-737-1025. Here again, we are live out at First Horizon Park, where the Sounds are taking on the Norfolk Tide tonight. We're very, very excited for people to come on out here. Again, as we are live at First Horizon Park. And we'll be giving something away later. And we've got Game 6 tickets to give away later today in the program. So be listening for that. And the Nashville Cats take on the Albany Firebirds tonight on the road. Pregame at 6:30, kickoff at 7. And Cats football on 102.5, 106 The Game, presented by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning.
So let's go to the next pick, because you talk about another reach, but also a very talented player. We know about the DWI. What do you think of that? What did you hear about Tavondre Sweat leading into the draft as a prospect, and what people thought of him?
I was surprised by that pick, definitely, because it was, I think there were a couple of things prior to even the DWI. Well, there's one thing in particular. It was sort of, yes, he is a massive, run blocking defensive tackle who you can put in the middle of your scheme. It's going to be very difficult to move off the ball, but that's what he's going to be. I think the question was like, is he going to weigh 400 pounds by his, third year in the league? Like, is it always going to be like a weight and conditioning management issue with him? Is he going to be able to pass the fitness test at the beginning of camp? That kind of a thing. And, I think that concern was pretty consistent. And then and look, it's not that he didn't win. I do think conditioning was a big concern. That was prior to the DWI happening. I think the question then becomes like, you're right in the middle of this process, and then this happens. And I think that for some teams, I don't want to say he came off the board, but I think the teams that were looking at him saying, he's either a sub-board player for us, which means we set him to the side and we are not going to draft this guy until we think the risk and the reward intersect. And that's probably in like the fourth round. Whereas other teams, I think, maybe valued what he brought to the table a little bit more.
Charles Robinson telling you, yeah, man, I was shocked by that pick. Just some teams are worried, like, is he going to get to 400 pounds? And again, I think the telling part of that is some teams took him off of their board and put him on the sub board, which means when we get to the fourth round, the fifth round, the sixth round, we'll look at it on day 3, not 38. So add him to the list of people that look at the Tavondre Sweat pick and say, like, oh my God, what were they thinking? Somebody says, who cares if we reached, if we got our guy? Well, number one, that's bad asset management, because what that means is you could have traded down and gotten your guy and gotten more picks. That is good asset management. The second thing is that it means that the teams that you're going to play against all got better players than you did, right? So like, let's say you got your guy and it's Tavondre Sweat and you really like him, and he ends up being a really good number 2 defensive lineman, which is what most people probably project him as if he can stay in shape and pass aside the concerns about maturity. Well, other teams may have gotten guys that make the Pro Bowl, guys that, have big time careers. And so those are the things you do when you draft for need, is other teams get better players and you don't take advantage of maximizing the asset. Let's go to your phones. Let's go to Ed in East Nashville on the Rand Carthon text from GMs. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Ed.
Hey, Jared, listen, it doesn't matter, man. I mean, look, does it really make a – I mean, look, as long as Sweat can tackle somebody, get to the quarterback, that's all I care about. I don't care if he's number 1 or number 200. You talk about asset management. It doesn't matter. Whatever move Rand makes, you're going to have something to talk. After we win the Super Bowl, you're still going to be yik-yak running off at the mouth. You don't like the guy. And just say it. That's what I don't like about you. You don't like
Well, I mean, here's my hold on, Ed. Ed, let me ask you this. Do you think that I don't like the guy, or do you think it's that I don't like the way that he runs the football team? Because those are two very different things.
What I don't understand is this. I could never dislike somebody I never met or don't know. And that's what
I have met
about you. I mean, it's ridiculous, man. I've never personally met you. You come on the radio
so you like
day.
Every NFL coach in the league?
I don't like you because I don't know you.
Ed,
I don't agree with everything you say.
Ed, what do you think about Mike McCarthy?
Let me ask you this. Look, let's just put this to rest. Let me ask you this way.
Okay.
When Jim Harbaugh took off, you don't think it's reasonable that somebody called Harbaugh and say, look, I would have taken Alt if you didn't take him? If that's the case, you don't think somebody could have called Rand and said the same thing? That's what happens in draft. Sometimes
said the same thing 3 times.
It's conversation,
Ed,
man. Let it
come
go.
on now. Ed, I appreciate your call. Here's my thing on, first of all, this idea of you hate Rand. No, I don't. I've met Rand like twice. I have no personal problems with it. I don't like the way he runs a football team. And I'll be honest, what I don't like is I don't like the lack of accountability. I mean, I think if you're going to run a football team and you're going to be successful, you need to be accountable. Not trade Kevin Byard, no press conference. Not, oh, the reason why our season was bad was because the ball did not bounce our way. He quoted Mike Vrabel, the guy they just fired, as the explanation for why the season went down the toilet last year, which none of us who watched that thought that it was, you know what, if they just gotten that punt return and if this had just, oh God, it was just so close. Nobody felt that way about last season. Not even the owner. That's why she fired the coach. And instead he gets up there and says, Mike's got a funny saying that the ball isn't round. And so it just didn't bounce our way. Like there's just no accountability. This is my first draft. No, it's not. I mean, I just, that's what I don't like is I don't like the lack of accountability. I don't like nobody ever questions what we're doing. All of our moves are right all the time. And everybody's like, I don't know if they are. They all seem here to say that they're not. Oh, no. My GM told me that. It's bullcrap. That's what I don't like. I mean, how can you run a football team if you can't tell the truth, or if you're telling, again, maybe he's telling the truth, but again, I find it very suspicious that the same thing basically was said about 3 different picks in 3 different interviews. I mean, how can you run a football team if you're using this, what seems like made up logic to justify your picks? 2-4 is up next on the Titans reaching in the draft. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, 2-4.
I appreciate y'all taking my call.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like, man, do we really have to keep doing this every day as far as beating them up about reaching in the draft? I mean, don't we understand that beauty is in the eye of the beholder? These guys may be. They may. So,
what do you think of the Atlanta Falcons?
That's a different story. But
okay. So the beauty of having 2 quarterbacks, one who's a $150 million quarterback and one who's the 8th pick on the roster, when you can only play one quarterback at one time, that's not in the eye of the beholder. But this is.
I understand that complaint. You know what I'm saying? Like in our situation, I would have preferred for Shanu or Odunze at number 7. I wasn't too crazy about Latham, but hey, we got him. So, but 38, come on, man. You talked about forever how we needed somebody next to Jeffrey Simmons to help him out. They did that. Maybe that guy was more valuable to them than he was to others. That happens. And what happens if this guy turns into a Pro Bowler? Then what?
But you could have done that. 2-4, I appreciate your call. You could have done that by trading back. Like, that's the point. Carolina at 39 traded back to, I believe, 52 with the Rams. And they got a 2nd-round pick in next year's draft in order to do it. That's a valuable pick. They added a top 60 pick in next year's draft and did not move out of the top 60 themselves. That's valuable. And so when you guys are like, well, who cares? I'm like, I'm sorry. Like this stuff does matter. More your phone. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. And by the way, I don't hate the Sweat pick. I just think it was bad asset management, and I'm worried that he is I'm worried about the play. Because, again, I've said this a lot, and I don't say it to be mean. I say it because it's true. And that is the old saying, dumb guys stay dumb, fat guys stay fat, and injured guys stay injured. The idea is don't convince yourself that you can change somebody. And I say that all the time. So then when the Titans take somebody who's got a weight issue, is playing at 380 pounds, which you can't play at in the NFL, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, let's not count that because it's our guy. And I can't do that. 615-737-1025. Window Nation. It is Window Nation's semi-annual sale. And it's a big deal because right now you can get 50% off all windows along with no interest for 5 years. Plus, bonus savings when you schedule a consult today. If your windows leak, get foggy or hot, or you're paying high utility bills, that's a big deal. You don't want to do it. So with Window Nation semi-annual sale, you can replace your windows and save big with a big deal too. So schedule a no-obligation in-home estimate now by calling 866-90Nation or visit windownation.com. Again, 50% off all windows, no interest for 5 years, and bonus savings when you schedule that no-obligation in-home estimate today. That's windownation.com.
Right. I think I wonder what's going on with Treylon Burks. So is this just it? It would be a nice addition, I think, for the Titans as a veteran, capable guy who's going to go out there and can catch, 50 balls for you, can put up, 500-600 receiving yards for you. And, but there's going to be a number of teams, I think, that are in on him, not just the Chargers and Titans. So economical, and this is where now all those free agents that have kind of sat now that the draft's over and teams weren't able to address some of those needs are going to start to pick guys up. I think they have a good shot at them. But I don't. Let's wait and see what other visits he ends up taking, because I don't think it's just going to be the Titans and Chargers.
That was Charles Robinson this morning on Robbie and Joe talking about Tyler Boyd. So the Titans have brought Tyler Boyd in for a visit. And on his Instagram story, he was posting in Nashville. Apparently, he's already visited the Chargers. And, a lot of people are really excited about that. But then the question has to be, okay, what's that mean about Treylon Boyd thing? I'm glad they're bringing him in. Sunshine pumping about, man, we're really just to make sure that Treylon doesn't think that we don't like him when our actions are clearly saying, hey, we really don't believe it. And I'm fine with that because I don't believe in Treylon Burks anymore. Well, Jared, hasn't been healthy. Right. And remember, injured guys stay injured. So I can't rely on Treylon Burks, and I don't think they should rely on Treylon Burks. I think Boyd would be great for Will Levis. I really do. Because I also don't necessarily love the tight ends that the Titans have either. And that tight end position, that sure-handed possession tight end that can move the chains is 9 times out of 10 a young quarterback's best friend. And I think Boyd can be that guy. Ridley is going to be the guy who runs down the field, so you're going to throw the ball to Ridley. Hopkins is going to be DeAndre Hopkins, which means he's going to run short, he's going to run intermediate, he is going to run long, and he's going to stay DeAndre Hopkins. Don't ask him to be, a possession, quote-unquote, receiver. Boyd, I feel like, is I feel like Boyd is a great fit for what they're probably looking to do as far as protecting the young quarterback and helping the young quarterback. But when it comes to Treylon Burks, and I heard Derek today, and I heard Derek earlier this week talking about, oh, well, they got to set him up for success, and he hasn't gotten the ball, and they need to target him, and they need to this, and they need to. I don't. Burks doesn't even cross my mind as far as an important part of the passing game. And see, Burks is somebody that you can talk yourself into. You can't talk yourself into Kearis Jackson because he was an undrafted free agent who played like 4 games last year. You cannot talk yourself into, well, we're okay because we could throw the ball to Kearis Jackson. You can't do that. You can't take a Trayshawn Harrison and say, oh, yeah, Trayshawn Harrison, he can be a receiver for us. But you can with Burks because Burks was a first-round pick. But through 2 years, Burks hadn't done it. And last year, Burks got the benefit of the doubt. His rookie year, he came in out of shape. I guess not his fault. Maybe it was. Who knows? But he comes in out of shape, and then he finally gets in shape, and then he really starts to come along, and he starts to make some plays, and everybody's happy, and it's good, and then he gets hurt. Well, that's tough luck. So let's see year 2. And then he drops the football, doesn't make a lot of big plays, gets hurt again, and it's like, okay. Like at this point, it just kind of is what you are. And maybe he is a diamond in the rough that, it's going to take some time and whatever, and he's going to come along and make it. Well, the cream always rises to the top in the league anyways. Derek Mason was buried on the depth chart behind Carl Pickens and Kevin Dyson and Yancey Thigpen and behind all those guys. Dyson tears his ACL, Thigpen gets hurt, Pickens is ineffective and hurt, and Derek Mason sets an NFL record for all-purpose yards in a season. And nobody ever thought, well, Derek can't do it ever again. And so for Burks, guys are going to get hurt anyways. And so it's like, hey, let's keep him on the roster. I don't know, not saying they should cut him or whatever, but I think the idea of counting on Burks, that horse has left the barn for me. And that's why I like Tyler Boyd. If I really thought Treylon Burks was going to be a big contributing piece this year, I would not be in the market for Tyler Boyd. But because I don't, I would be in the market for Tyler Boyd. And that's why I assume that they're in the market for Tyler Boyd. 615-737-1025. Okay. All the draft analysts do not like the Titans draft. And every time I say it, everybody gets mad, but it is what it is. Like, you getting mad in the text line is not going to change my opinion. What does TD think about the draft class as a whole, about the idea of the reaches? We'll do that coming up next here on Stillman and Company, live from First Horizon Park. The TD Power Hour is next. Again, we've got Game 6 tickets to give away later today in the program. And I'm thinking we should give them away later on. And when we do this, we should do a code word. We should have a code word. And here's what the code word is going to be, or I guess code phrase. 2 and 0. That's going to be it. Because the Predators need to go 2 and 0 to get out of this series. So when I tell you to call Ian, which is not right now, you will call Ian, give him the code phrase, and if you're the first person to do it, when I tell you to do it, you'll be going to Game 6. So you got to be listening for that. Meanwhile, let's give something away. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025. You want a pair of tickets to see Stevie Nicks at Bridgestone Arena on Tuesday, May 14th. That's right. Go ahead and knock yourself out with that one. TD's next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios. First Horizon Park Sounds tonight, taking on the Norfolk Tides. And it's 3 o'clock on a Thursday, which means it's time for the TD Power Hour. TD is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, how are you?
I'm doing really well, man. It's a great day, man. The weather is beautiful. I love this time of the year because it's when just everything just starts to bloom. And, man, listen, I can't help but smile, man. It's a beautiful day.
Well, and you get out of the film room and you get on the football field a little bit here in the near future.
Yeah, that's coming up soon.
So I want to start with this, TD. Every national pundit says the Titans reached in the draft at 7, at 38, and I mean, just hammering. Now, I can't do this thing where I'm like, well, it doesn't matter, and then laugh at the Atlanta Falcons. Because, I still don't know what the Atlanta Falcons are thinking. But I'm a little torn between, did they really reach? Are all these national guys wrong? Or, did they mismanage it a little bit? How do you see it?
I don't think they mismanaged it. Look, they went into this thing. They did their research. They had a full understanding that Joe Alt was going to go to the Chargers, and they had J.C. Latham ranked just as high as Joe Alt on the board. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the way it was. And I had a source tell me, look, you set your board and you let it talk to you, and that board talked to them, right? Tackle was the biggest need. They went with 1B, or in some cases 1A, when it was their pick at 7. Could they have moved back? Maybe. They probably could have, but guess what? The Jets were right behind them, hoping that either Latham or Olu Fashanu was going to be there. And look, they took Fashanu. Who knows if they would have taken Latham instead? So it's always easy to, I could sit here and say, hey, Jared, you know what? You talked about these topics on here, but this topic would have done a lot better. It's easy to be in the peanut gallery and say that. And I'm not trying to defend them. I'm just saying in their eyes, they didn't reach because they got the player that they wanted. And then you turn around and you look at T'Vondre Sweat in the second round. Everybody's like, oh, well, they reached for him. Well, listen, you go back and you watch the film. This dude, he was a first-team All-American, not second, third. First-team All-American. He got the award for the top defensive lineman, the top interior lineman in college football. It's not like he's a slouch. Obviously, the DWI situation is something that he has to get together. And obviously, I know personally about, making that turnaround, that pivot and getting right. And that's what he has to do. But you also have to look at the next 4 picks, actually 5 of the next 10 picks that were after the Titans pick Sweat were traded. Teams were looking to move back, but guess what happened the very next time a team was on the board? They drafted Braden Fisk, the Rams. Would they have drafted Sweat? I don't know, but they definitely went defense. And then 3 others went all the way up until pick 54. So it was very clear there was going to be a run on defensive tackles. They started the run by taking Sweat. I think you look at Sweat and how he compares to Jeffrey Simmons, what he could do as far as pairing with him. You can't. He's going to face double teams, but there are going to be times when he isn't double teamed, and that's going to be a problem for the opposing team. That's going to help Jeffrey Simmons. And guess what? They got this guy in the 4th round by the name of Cedric Gray, who actually is my favorite pick out of all their draft picks. He's going to be able to come in and get clean shots on running backs, because Sweat is going to occupy blockers up front. So you have to look at the full picture. That's what you have to look at. And I think you look at those 2 picks, I don't believe they reached. Now, is it guaranteed that Latham is going to flip to left tackle and be good? No. Do I personally have my questions? Absolutely. Is it guaranteed that Sweat is going to be able to play a full lion's share of snaps? No. Do I have my questions about his conditioning and weight getting right? Absolutely. So there's questions, but I don't think they reached.
I just want to say, when you said, talking about you talked about this topic, but you could talk about that topic. That is an anxiety of mine, TD, that I have literally every day. And the most frustrating part is not knowing the answer, right? So, let's say that we're talking right now, the Predators are in the playoffs. So it's like we could be talking ball or we could be talking about the Predators. What percentage of the audience wants ball and wants the Predators? It's like, okay, well, we'll talk Predators. Well, I know what the results will be when the results come down about what it says for that doing Predators in that segment. But I'll never know what it would have been if I had talked football in that other part. And it's like, okay, so and you can ask some of these teams, but they'll never tell you. And then there's no idea what the other teams that are around those teams would have done too. And so you're talking about an anxiety that I truly feel is real. There's no going back and saying, okay, we take Bowers now. What happens? But
well, I tell you, you do a good job of
I am worried about the weight. I am worried about the weight because, nobody can play in the NFL at 380 pounds. Like and so he's down to 366. Part of me worries about the 366 being, hey, you're getting weighed in at the combine. We know that we can, maybe the night before try not to eat anything or try to, get all the sweat out, everything else, whatever.
But from what I understand, he's maintained that.
He's maintained the 366?
Yeah. And then
that's a big deal.
Here's something pretty cool, right? 2 days later, there was a video. It was on Sunday. It posted of guys back in Texas, in Austin at the university working out, right? And it was Xavier Worthy, Jonathan Brooks, one of the receivers, other receivers also.
You're talking about the video where he said, like, hey, I'm here to prove that the doubters wrong.
Yeah, so it's very clear that it's something that he took personally. So I think, you look at that, and then you also look at what Brian Callahan said. He made it clear to him that it would be very expensive to come in overweight, and for whatever right, wrong, or indifferent, money talks, right? So if he's going to get hefty fines for being hefty, I would imagine he's not going to be hefty. You know what I'm saying? And then I think you look at just what you have around you. See, what a lot of people don't know, I talked to him at the Senior Bowl, and he told me that he actually watches Jeffrey Simmons because of hand usage. He really loves how Jeffrey Simmons uses his hands. So here it is. Just picture yourself. Remember how inspired and motivated you were to come to work every day with the GM?
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because
didn't want to let him down.
You looked up to him, and you didn't want to let him down. I think you had that same situation with Sweat and Simmons, and then also with Keandre Colburn, who was like his old hit, his OG, back from Texas.
I do wonder what the support structure that the Titans have. I mean, every team has team psychologists and things like that. But I do wonder when it comes to, I don't want to use the term babysitting because that sounds demeaning, but maybe mentoring or, like somebody that's a part of the staff that can really, really just, I don't say live with him, but the big problem, like we're talking about the workout video. I'm not worried about him working out because you can't be that big and move that fast and be that powerful if you don't work out. Like,
working out is that's exactly how you keep the weight down. You know what I mean?
I know, but what I'm worried about is at late at night. And look, I'm not a skinny guy. I can tell you right now, what I'm worried about is late at night, Wendy's, Taco Bell, Burger King. I've worked hard today at practice. That's what I'm worried about.
Jim Wyatt asked him about Papa Do's, and he was saying, how he likes the calamari, but he was like, man, I got to watch my weight. I don't eat it anymore. You have that. I think also you talk about as far as in staff people, James Mitchell, he's the team chaplain, and he's someone that, he's another one of those guys where he's like that uncle. You don't want to, man. I can't disappoint Mitch, man. You know what I mean? You do something wrong, you go in, and he's there looking at you with the toothpick in his mouth, looking at you, and you're like, dang. You know what I mean? But then you also have Chick Edgiosity, and I think the role that he plays as far as player development is big time. I know, you look at some of the players in the past that he's helped along. Obviously, everybody didn't work out perfectly, but you look at some of the players, he's been a big part of that. So they do have a good support system in place. I think you look at Denard Wilson, he's another one of those guys where it's just like, dang, man, this dude is on 100 all the time. I got to be on 100 all the time. You look at Tracy Rocker. I don't know about his coaching, but just from what I've heard about just how he's able to get on guys, that's going to help too. So I think the support system is in place. But should there definitely be questions? Yeah, absolutely. You should still have questions, but I don't think the concern is as great as it's being made out to be.
One last thought on the Latham thing. You talked about, moving from right tackle to left tackle. I again, and I'm not a guru or anything like this, I see Latham as a perfect right tackle prospect. If Bill Callahan was not the coach and you told me they're going to move him to left tackle, I would think there's a 0% chance of that working. Because Bill Callahan is the coach, I still have my skepticism, but I think there's a chance it works. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely makes it more palatable. But I'll say this. He made the switch from left tackle to right tackle and became one of the best offensive linemen in the country. I would imagine he could make the switch back. You know what I'm saying? And that's just from talking to, a couple of Billy I always want to say Billy Williams, but Billy Miller, his head coach there at IMG, he was there his final year at IMG. And then you also have Coach Bobby Acosta, who was the head coach there while he made that switch, because he was originally a defensive lineman, right? And then they had injuries on the O-line, and they flipped him to left tackle, and he balled out. And, yes, it's high school, I know. But I'm just saying he's played the position before, so now it's just retraining, and just like Brian Callahan said, getting your steps and your technique, just flipping it back to the left side. That's really what it comes down to. It's not a super easy task, but it's not an impossible one like it's being made out to be.
Okay, here's what I want to do next. TD's with us for the TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, I want to go pick by pick. And I'm going to shut the hell up. And I just want, because I know that you watched a ton of film on these guys ahead of time, but I'm guessing that you probably watched a lot more, of player-specific film since they became Titans. So I'm going to shut up, and TD's going to break down the entire draft class. How do you feel about that, TD?
Hey, let's do it.
I can't hear the audience, but I can hear them. I can hear them saying, yes, shut up. So we'll do that next. First, though, I'm going to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love those guys. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. Hiller, proud supporters of the Preds. You will see that Hiller logo right there at the center of the ice, and I can promise you that Hiller is pulling for the Predators tomorrow night. Have you ever had a contractor coming to your home and it takes forever? You feel like you've wasted your whole day. Well, when you call Hiller, you don't have to camp out all day waiting. And I know this because what I do, I go right on the website. I don't even have to download an app. I just write to the website, happyhiller.com. And I'll say, oh, yeah, I know I'm not doing anything Friday morning. And then it'll be, okay, from 8 to 10, they'll be there Friday. And then I get a call and it's like, he's on his way. And then I see on the map. And I mean, you're never just sitting there all freaking day when it comes to Hiller. It's amazing. Be a happy camper this month with 0% interest financing for 24 months on select HVAC systems, generators, and tankless water heaters. Or take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning special. Take care of your home systems before the peak summer temperatures hit. Visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today.
You look at T'Vondre Sweat, I like the kid. I'd like them a lot better, more than anybody did. We had debated that. I thought he was a guy who was productive. I thought he was more disruptive than anybody gave him credit for. Byron Murphy II didn't outproduce him by much in terms of even sack production. He had 5, Sweat had with 2.5. Sweat was getting the job done. Why couldn't you run against Texas? It was because of that wall that was T'Vondre Sweat. He is huge. I understand the draft process didn't treat him tremendously well. But you go back to the tape, people say, well, he's built for 1980. He's another one of those guys. I talk about Tommy Eichenberg, built for the 80s. You know, we don't need to stay-at-home type defensive tackles anymore. Last time I checked, they still do run the football. And T'Vondre Sweat did give you some ability to get into the backfield. So when you look at it and you size it all up, I thought at the end of the day he'd be a third-round pick like Gilbert Brown, who was my comp to him when he came out of Kansas a while ago, right? Had a good career. T'Vondre Sweat was a little early for everybody, I think. For me, though, I like the player. I like what he can become if he stays focused on the attention to detail, stays focused on the job at hand. I think he can be a guy who can help this football team. J.C. Latham, can he be a left tackle? We don't know that. He believes he can. Alabama never moved him. I love him as a right tackle. Can he be a left tackle? Of their late-round picks, Jarvis Brownlee's okay. Down the field, he's got to locate the ball. Yep. That's what bothered me a little bit with him. I said it when he was drafted. So some of these guys, they're okay. James Williams is a tweener. What is he? Is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? That's why I gave them a grade that I did, not as high as some of the other teams.
There you go. Mel Kiper Jr. gave the Titans a C+. And I did say this on Monday, TD, which was he gave the Chiefs 2017 class a C+, and that did end up with Patrick Mahomes in it. And I would say, looking back on it, A++++. So make of that what you will. But enough of Mel Kiper, enough of Matt Miller, Jordan Reed, Dane Brugler. It's time for TD. So TD, what we're going to do is we're just going to stand out of the way here. I'm going to write down some notes of what you say of the certain picks the Titans have. Maybe we'll come back and dial up some of these questions on them. But without further ado, let's get him the music, Ian. Let's get him the official draft breakdown music. And let's start right at the top.
I really like this.
Round 1, pick 7, J.C. Latham, Alabama.
I like this, put me on the spot, no preparation or anything like that. We just rock out, man, and that's what we do. So I think when you look at J.C. Latham, I watched a few games. I like the Texas game that he played. Coincidentally, he did go against T'Vondre Sweat a couple times. But I think when you look at Latham, you do have some penalties. Like he jumped off sides a false start. There were a couple times where, the guys got up on him quickly and he had to hold or he got penalized there. Like Brian Callahan said, you could clean that up. But I think when you look at this guy, the main thing is how players react when he puts his hands on them. That's what stands out so much to me. You see guys really just get stopped. You see them get jolted back when he puts his hands on them. And I think that's something that is always going to work in his favor. And then again, like I said, he's a guy that could flip back to left tackle because he's done it before. I believe that's a really good pick. I liked Joe Alt more than him, but I still feel that they're in good shape there, and he's going to make that switch. And the personality is really good, right? I asked him what makes him flip the switch, and he said he channels his inner Marshawn Lynch, and he just wants to run through a face over and over and over and over and over and over again. I love that. So, yeah, J.C. Latham, I think that's a good pick.
Round 2, pick 38, T'Vondre Sweat, Texas.
So, Jared, if you remember back in January, I came back from the Senior Bowl, and I was like, man, this dude, T'Vondre Sweat, seeing him up close and personal, to be that size and the way he moves, wow. Seeing that firsthand, it really stood out to me. And it's interesting because, you see a guy that size and you're like, why don't you just bull rush all the time? Because when he bull rushes, look, they try to take that hop and anchor and support themselves, but it just simply is too much when he does it. I want him to do it a little bit more. And I asked him why he doesn't do it more, and he said he gets bored. So you look at that, and he was like, it's too easy. And like Tierra Tart, he was a hooper growing up. I asked him about that, and he told me, how he averaged a double-double. He was always getting the boards and things like that. And then you also look at the hand moves, right? This is a guy that you watch his tape. A lot of times, you see him be able to so quickly keep his chest plate clean by smacking the lineman's hands down and matching that with a club and swim move. And that swim move, if you remember, Tierra Tart used to do that all the time, and he was in the backfield like that, and that's something that Sweat brings. He's a better player than Tierra Tart. Just picture, and it's funny because during the season, watching Sweat, I said, man, this is a souped-up version of Tierra Tart. So it's pretty cool that they were able to get him, and now you put him next to Jeffrey Simmons. I think that's a really good situation. And then also another thing that I know he's 366 pounds. He played at 380 or whatever it was, but you look at the effort when he played, he was a guy that had no problem running backs down that were running to the opposite side. So that really impressed me with him. T'Vondre Sweat is a guy I really like, but there are questions. So we'll see what happens there. But the next guy, though.
Round 4, pick 106, Cedric Gray, North Carolina.
Ian, I'm smiling, so you know what I'm thinking about, right?
Sounds like another pass linebacker.
That's right. David Long Jr. Day-Day is what they call him. Listen. You watch Cedric Gray, you get flashbacks to him. And I think when you look at just the way he plays with his hair on fire, the sideline ability that he brings, and then I use the same similarity, the same metaphor that I use for David Long Jr. If you picture yourself on 65 in traffic and you got that car that's just kind of weaving through, left lane, right lane, and just weaving through, avoiding other cars and just getting ahead, that's the way Cedric Gray and David Long Jr. go after the quarterback, go after the ball carrier. They have a way of just being able to dip and condense themselves to make offensive linemen miss. But if the offensive lineman gets their hands on them, woo-wee, they're pretty much out of the play. They're the same guys. So that's something that you look at. But just the ability to diagnose and trigger is something that really shows with Cedric Gray. You watch the Appalachian State game shows his instincts, right? It was a play action, and he bit the first 2 steps, but then said, oh, shoot, it's a pass, and dropped back in the passing lane. The quarterback tried to get it over his head. He jumped up and picked it off. Those are the types of things that you have with Cedric Gray. He's solid in the pass defense, solid against the run, sideline to sideline, and he's a very heady player. And he had 3 seasons of 100-plus tackles. I know tackles are a stat that are subjective, but you're not going to get credited with the tackle if you're not around the football. So that tells me he's always around the ball. Oh, and by the way, he has plenty of interceptions to boot. I believe it was 8 forced fumbles or something along those lines. So, yeah, this is a guy that will turn the football over. I think that he's going to come in, and if I'm Jack Gibbons, I'm saying, I'm going to give him my best. That's all I would say, because I think that Cedric Gray, if not the season opener, by week 4 is going to be the starter next to Kenneth Murray.
Round 5, pick 146, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., Louisville.
Jared, I text you and told you that this guy gets the TD stamp of approval. This is another guy came back from the Senior Bowl really impressed with. And, you watch him during the year. You look at the Florida State game. That's the game that really stands out to me. And he's one of those guys, and I told him after practice on Tuesday or Wednesday, I said, Jarvis, man, listen, if we were on the same team, I will fight you every single day. And he just looked at me like, what the heck? And I'm like, that's a compliment, though, because that's how feisty you are. You always seem to be in the receiver's hip pocket and always there with him, and you do little things that you could tell is getting the receiver frustrated. You watch that Florida State game, man, listen, Johnny Wilson, we talking about a guy like Plaxico Burress' size. He was jumping all in his face, throwing him to the ground and bullying him, and Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is 5'10". You know what I mean? So I think you look at that, and just the way that he's willing to come up and support against the run is really good. I think you look at him, his press ability, he loves to get physical at the line of scrimmage, and it's just perfect that he said, hey, you know what? I can't wait to learn from L'Jarius Sneed, because guess what? L'Jarius Sneed, and this is the thing, when watching Jarvis Brownlee, he made me think of L'Jarius Sneed, just as far as the physicality at the line of scrimmage. But what separates a guy like Sneed, who is a top 3 corner in this league, and Brownlee, who is a 5th-round pick, is the speed. That's the one thing, right? He's not a guy that is really good at turning and running with receivers. He'll get beat on vertical routes, and that's something that the Titans, they've struggled with that in the past. So it is a little bit of a problem there that they'll have to figure out. But Jarvis Brownlee Jr. in the 5th round, I think, he gives them depth behind Roger McCreary, and he's a guy that he fits the need, that aggressive style that Denard Wilson wants.
Round 6,
my notes
pick
I wrote
1.
down. Go ahead. I'm sorry about that, but I wrote down in my notes, to ask you physically, how does he compare to Sneed? And you just answered it right there.
Yeah, the same type of aggressive little pit bull type of style.
Round 6, pick 182. Jaquan Jackson, Tulane.
All right, so it can't be all butterflies and good things, right? Listen, I love the fact that he and Tajay Spears were teammates there at Tulane and roommates even on the road. I love the explosiveness that he brings. He's a big play guy. But there's a couple things. A little bit of an issue with drops. You saw him have some easy drops. A lot of his production this past year, I think it was against South Alabama, it wasn't – look, he's a guy I would have went a different direction. I'll just be frank with you. I would have went a different direction at 6 with the 6th-round pick. The other thing, because everybody says, okay, well, his calling card is going to be special teams. And that's great because he had a 90-plus yard kickoff return. He's a guy that's explosive in the punt return game, and you do want that because that's now an extra offensive play when you're talking about kick returns. But there is a little bit of a wart with the muffed muffs. And you saw how quickly that put Kyle Phillips in the doghouse. Jaquan Jackson has to make sure that that's something that he doesn't do at this level because it's going to cost him. And with Tyler Boyd here in Nashville today, if they sign him, you're talking about 7 receivers. I don't know that he will be one of them for sure. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's a pick where, hey, you can't hit on every one of them. But hopefully for his sake, he proves me wrong.
Round 7, pick 242. James Williams, Miami.
Listen, every team, and T'Vondre Sweat is this too, you can't have too many of them, but you have to have a few of them. I can't say the true word that I would use to explain these types of guys, but let's just put it this way. Remember how Darren Bates was on the team? Just that guy that you're just like, yeah, we had a bunch of them, man. We would be in big trouble. You know what I mean? James Williams is another one of them. You talk about arriving with bad intentions. This guy brings it. Now, he's a step 3 too slow to play safety. So the move to linebacker is perfect for him. It's going to be a gradual transition. He has to get used to the physicality that's required to play that position. But you look at special teams, being a cover guy, yeah, he's going to help there because he's one of those ones that he doesn't give a daggone about his body. You know what I mean? He's going to sacrifice his body, and he's going to go down there and make the tackle. But then you look at just the size that he brings to that position. It's a good combination there. And I think he's going to be not a starter, but he's a guy that you could bring in passing situations. You can match him up against some of the tight ends and get an advantage there. I like the pick, but it's another one where, it's going to be like a bottom roster type of situation.
Round 7, pick 252.
Jalen
Murphy, Michigan.
So we'll round it out with Jalen Harrell, actually, from Michigan. And when I picture him, I think more situational. He's a guy that he's going to come in and you could have him. He led Michigan in sacks this past year. And he's a guy that you could put him in situational pass rushing situations, is going to be a part of the rotation. I mean, this is a 7th-round pick, so you can't get too crazy about it. Not sure exactly how much of a contribution he's going to bring. Like, I don't know that I would have him on the field, when it comes to first and second down, where teams are more likely to run. But if you bring him in an Alden Smith type of role, right? And I'm not saying he's the same pass rusher as Alden Smith, because Alden Smith was one of the best, back when he was playing. But in that situation where you have a starter, Rashad Weaver, whoever it may be, Arden Key, and you want to change things up a little bit, you could bump Arden Key inside and you could bring him in and have him be your pass rusher, because he is a guy that will, get a good jump off the ball and help you out there.
Wow. And you said you didn't even have any prep, TD. You didn't need any right there. The full TD breakdown of the Titans draft class. I got a couple of questions. We'll hit those on the other side. Let's get your questions for TD in as well. 615-737-1025. TD, great stuff.
Thank you.
The TD Power Hour is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Let's talk about Twice Daily. Twice Daily has your cravings, and you can save on every visit. Stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program today to unlock special discounts, savings, enter their sweepstakes, and so much more. So try their new wraps, Italian, ham and cheddar, turkey and Swiss, Nashville hot chicken, you name it. They're made to order with your favorite toppings, and when you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. Or at Twice Daily, it's snack time all the time. They've got favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, and new pretzels. That's right. It's fabulous. I love Twice Daily. Twice Daily. What are you craving? Stillman and Company, we are live at First Horizon Park, where again the Sounds are taking on Norfolk at 6:35. It is the TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. So, TD, I got a couple of questions after your draft breakdown, and then I'm going to want to make sure to leave a lot of time for the callers and the texters today. So, my first one is this: you said you watched the Alabama-Texas game with Latham and Sweat, and my question for you is, who won between the two?
It was 2 reps, and it was basically just a stalemate. It was one of those plays where it was a run to the opposite side, and they just kind of like locked up, and just that was it. So that's another thing about Sweat that a lot of people have to realize. This guy didn't just play head up on the center. Like, they had him out in like a 5 technique. Like, I'm not going to say he's going to do that a lot in the league, but they moved this dude around and gave him opportunities. And to do that with a guy that's 366, that's impressive.
On Tavondre Sweat, one thing I never hear anybody talking about, I saw Matt Miller wrote at ESPN.com that he didn't like the Titans draft class and that they didn't go edge rusher. But what does Sweat's presence do for Simmons as an edge rusher as opposed to Simmons as a D tackle?
Well, if you look at it, so let's say, Simmons is playing a 5 tech and you got Sweat inside, right? And what ends up happening, you look at some of the things that they do with stunts, what they did with Vrabel and Shane Bowen last year, right? They would have one guy be the trigger one, Danico Autry. Like, he would target the left tackle and try to pull the guard with him, and Simmons or whoever it may be, Landry, would loop inside. When you have a guy like Sweat, right, going and getting the tackle, and you have the guard there too, like, it's just natural as a lineman, just as a person, something that big moving across your face, like, you're going to go with it. And that clears up an open path for Simmons to loop inside and go to the quarterback. But then also you just look at just straight up pass rushing, right? So let's say he lines up, in that B gap, right? And he's right between the guard and the center. 366 pounds, the strength that he has, the bull rush that he has when he's not playing too high, that's going to get a lot of push, right? And so now you got the guard has to come and help the center, and they're working together. And now you got Jeffrey Simmons one-on-one with a tackle. That's almost always going to be an advantage Titans. You know what I mean? And then even if you slide it over a little bit further and you set him up to be one-on-one with guards, Simmons is his combination of quickness and strength gets up on you. Look remember how he was folding Quentin Nelson like a church banquet chair?
Yeah.
That's because he was getting on him so fast, and then the strength with it. It's perfect. It's perfect. That's why Simmons called Rand and said, "Hey, thank you. I appreciate the help."
Okay, last one for you on Cedric Gray. I have not heard a bad thing about this guy. I was listening to NFL radio, and they had Jim Nagy, from the Senior Bowl as one of the analysts, and he was raving about him, and Jim Miller and Pat Kerwin, they were raving about him.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard a single bad thing. They said that he led the ACC in tackles ahead of Peyton Wilson, and yet I never heard his name pre-draft brought up when compared to Edgerrin Cooper or Peyton Wilson as kind of those premier inside backers. So why was he available at 106?
Yeah, no, I brought him up talking about Edgerrin Cooper, as well as Junior Colson and Jordan McGee. Yep. Those were the 4 guys that I figured won from there. I knew Peyton Wilson was out of it because of the injuries, but nevertheless, he was available because he's not quite the same athlete that like Edgerrin Cooper. That dude, like, he plays like somebody, poured gas on him and lit him on fire. And he arrives, thumps and stuff like that. He's different. But the thing is, Cedric Gray is better than him in coverage, right? And you look at Colson, he's another complete linebacker, but he's a better athlete than Cedric Gray. So I think that's really the main thing, the 4.65 40 as compared to what some of the other guys ran, Colson and Cooper. And Peyton Wilson, he blew up the combine. If this dude, and I hate to use ifs, but so we'll say it this way, injuries really depleted his draft stock. That's a first-round type of player. If the Steelers could get him to stay healthy, there's going to be problems in the AFC North. But I think you look at Cedric Gray, he's not the same athlete as those guys, but the production is there. I love how, and I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but when I asked Rand about rookie linebackers being the green dot, he mentioned Curtis Lofton doing it in year 2 after Keith Brooken moved on with the Falcons. But who did he say? Well, Fred Warner did it as a rookie.
Yeah.
And also, if you look at Fred Warner, when he was at BYU, like he didn't play true middle linebacker, right? So he was able to make that switch and do it. So Cedric Gray, I forget who asked him, but they were like, hey, who are some players that you watch, you model your game after? First name he said, Fred Warner. You gotta love it. But he also mentioned Zaire Franklin, who was, he had like 370 tackles last year for the Colts.
And all of them were against the Titans. All right, TD will answer your questions next. 615-737-1025. It's the TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook on Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 The Game. TD Power Hour is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Let me get out of the way. Let's get to your phones. Your phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kyle has been waiting patiently. Kyle, you're on with TD. Go ahead.
What's going on, guys? Good to talk to you.
Appreciate it. What's up, Kyle?
Well, Jared, I want to get to you first. I called in and asked you if you wish we would lost in the Miami game so we can get a better draft selection. Well, that would have landed us Malik Neighbors. What do you think about that now?
I am still glad they won the Miami game. I think that the kind of the mental, everybody's belief in Levis pumped because of that second half comeback, and I wouldn't trade that for the difference between Latham and Neighbors. But that's just me.
That's me too. So I just want to make sure, I thought the same thing. I like Neighbors, but yeah. Anywho, TD, if we do get Boyd, who's the odd man out? Because we got some depth now, finally, receiver. What do you think we should do?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, Jared, I got to give you credit. You made an excellent point before I came on, and you were talking about tight ends. And I said, yeah, that's Tyler Boyd. He could fill the same void. Signing Tyler Boyd is a really good move for Will Levis because it gives you a guy who's very, very reliable work in the middle of the field. That's where he specializes. And it's funny, I would be really happy with this signing. I followed Tyler Boyd since he was at Pitt with Greg Lewis as his coach. You know what I mean? So it was cool to, see his career come along. But I think what it means is they keep 7 receivers, and I think it would be Burks, Boyd, Ridley, Phillips, NWI, Burks, Boyd, Ridley, Hopkins, and then the 7th would be Jaquan Jackson, Kearis Garrett, one of those types of players. So I think it means they keep 7. I think it does mean that they still, want to see more and aren't full 100% believers in Traylon Burks, which is understandable.
Austin says, TD, what are you hearing about Boyd's visit, and what do you think the chances are he ends up signing?
So I touched base this afternoon, and I was just told that he was there. Didn't get anything as far as a signing being imminent or anything like that, but, I mean, you know how these visits go. Sometimes they hit off, and next thing you know, they don't want the guy to leave, and he has a contract.
And sometimes it's DeAndre Hopkins, and we follow it every day for 2 months.
Yeah.
And then he ends up signing. Adam in Portland is up next on the program. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, hey, TD, I think you need to calm Jared down, man. Like, he's really on one. He's on a tear, man. Like, just conspiracy theories and everything's just rapidly I don't know. I think his blood pressure. He needs to get his blood pressure checked. I think his blood pressure.
First of all, the conspiracy theories are like an everyday thing. This is not like a today thing.
It's like the X-Files, man.
Get a doctor to come on the show and do. That's not my problem. So, all right. So what I have a problem with, like, is if you got somebody like Jared who's sitting here calling these young guys like Latham like a bad pick, or Sweat a bad pick. If they hear that nonsense from all these people, what do they actually have to do to show you that they're not a bad pick? Like the first year, what do you need to see out of them to know that they're not a bad pick? Because I feel like they're already being held to a standard that they cannot live up to if they have all these people putting that kind of pressure on them. So what do you need to see for them to be a good pick?
Sounds like a question for me.
Yeah.
I would say this. I am worried. One thing I'm seriously worried about, and I'm going to be one of the, conspirators in this, is I am worried about J.C. Latham making the adjustment to left tackle.
Why?
And because it's hard enough to learn how to play in the NFL if you are, if you played every snap at Alabama at left tackle, it's hard enough to make that individual adjustment to just playing in the NFL, which he would have to make if he played right tackle no matter what. But now
he's a better prospect than Jedrick Wills Jr. And he's in the same situation as Wills was when the Browns selected him. And he's a better prospect.
But Wills had a left-handed quarterback.
So does that mean the technique is different at right tackle?
I mean,
no,
it's about,
right?
To me, it's a blind side blocker, though.
Okay, but as a blind side blocker, is your technique different? You're still just flipping. You're still just flipping from right to left, regardless. regardless you're flipping. So I don't, and I heard you mention that yesterday. I don't, that's not really the case. Your technique is still the same. You still have to do the same things as far as like getting back and kicking, and your kick step, etc.
I am nervous that if Latham has the same adjustment issue Skoronski had, that it's going to be a lot worse.
Yeah. No,
as far as how mad me and everybody else gets about the adjustment and everything else. And it's like, I saw a workout of Peter, of Skoronski working out, and he definitely looks significantly thicker. He looks like a guard. Like, that's what he looks like now. And I wonder, like, how much of last year with Peter was the fact that he had the appendectomy or had the people around him, or how much of it was the adjustment? And so I worry about that with Latham. For me,
it's a combination. I just
want the left tackle to be something that I don't worry about anymore. And if that happens, then you will hear me say that was a good pick, and Bill Callahan knows Bill Callahan knows all. And if Bill Callahan says do it, do it. But for right now, I'm just, on the skeptical side there. And for me with Sweat, I mean, to me, it's about just get that big tush and fast feet on the field. And if he can do that, that's all I care about.
Yeah, no, I get it. I agree. Again, both of those are – what's crazy? And I'm going to say this. I feel more confident in Cedric Gray transitioning to the league and being successful right away than Latham and Sweat, because of the questions that we have, right? You look at a guy flipping positions. You look at a guy who, has some questions about conditioning, weight, etc. You don't have those same questions. Like, you look at Cedric Gray and like, hey, this dude NFL ready. He'll come and play. And that's not to say he's a better prospect than those, but there are less questions about him than there are about Sweat and about Latham. But I believe that both of those guys are going to come in and be solid players.
One texter asked a great question, which is, what does all of this mean for Kenneth Murray, and how do you envision him as a pass rusher, even though he's listed as an inside backer?
Remember how I was talking about Darius Robinson, and he's a guy, before he runs on the field, you put your mouth to his ear hole and you say, hey, listen, just go bust stuff up. That's what you tell Kenneth Murray. That's what they're going to do. That 6'5", 240 or whatever it is, pounds that he brings, they're going to let him attack. And he's another guy that's going to benefit from Tavondre Sweat being up there occupying blockers and gaps, etc. And I think when you look at a guy like Kenneth Murray, even on running plays, right, you have him shoot the gap, right, and he's one of those guys. He'll run right into an offensive lineman and blow him up, maybe not make the tackle, but he'll open it up. So a guy like Cedric Gray on 65, weaving through the traffic, could weave right in and make the tackle.
TD, great stuff as always. Talking with TD is out, but I do want you to tell everybody about the ESPN Bet Sports.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of talking with TD, we got Billy Miller, who is the head coach there at IMG. We got him on and had a good conversation about Jason Latham. So make sure you guys check that out. But as for ESPN Bet, man, this is one you want to download. It's ready to take you through all the huge sports moments this spring. It's the exclusive sportsbook of ESPN, and it has it all, including offers and promotions from Scott Van Pelt and Stephen A. Smith. From the playoff intensity to getting on the links and out to the ballpark, there's no better time to be a sports fan than right now. As a new user, you get $100 in bonus bets for making any sportsbook bet. So download ESPN Bet today. What a play. You must be 21 or older and in Tennessee. For problem gambling support, call or text TN Redline at 800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. See the app for details. And Francisco Lindor hit a game-winning home run today. Let's go.
Texter, by the way, says TD brings it every time. Couldn't agree more. TD, great stuff as always. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate it.
Yep, TD joining us as he always does. Now, Tyler Boyd's in for a visit. I want the Titans to sign him. But my anxiety is starting to really get me to worry about something else that I just got to get off my chest. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We're at First Horizon Park today where the Sounds are taking on the Norfolk Tide tonight, 6:35 for the first pitch. So everybody knows that I've got anxiety, right? I talk about my anxiety all the time. I think everybody has a certain level of anxiety. It's just some people have more anxiety than others. I mean, that's probably right, Ian, right? Like everybody has some sort of anxiety.
Sure. I think I do too. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I might have a little bit more anxiety than others, especially if I, like say yesterday when I went to bed at like midnight, 1 o'clock, whatever, after the Predators game. And so I had to drink a nice diet soda yesterday because I don't drink coffee. So I got to drink some with caffeine in it. And then, then I get super anxious. So the Titans are bringing Tyler Boyd in for a visit to play wide receiver. And I like Tyler Boyd. And I think they have a need. And I think Tyler Boyd would be a good fit for Will Levis. And I like all of that. What it means for Traylon Burks, probably not that great, but that's his business, not mine. But it is my anxiety is starting to manifest itself in kind of a different, I'll just say a different position. Because when I see the Titans bring in Tyler Boyd, there's a part of me that wants to say, who's going to play right tackle? Like, that's where I'm sitting right now. And look, the Titans probably have a list of guys that, okay, here's the targets we'd look at for safety. Here are the targets we'd look at for receiver. Here are the targets we'd look at for tackle. Here's what's left on the free agent market. Here's who we're hearing might be cut. Here's what we're like, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not getting mad at the Titans for bringing in Tyler Boyd on a visit and saying, well, what does that mean as far as the right tackle position? Because I want to know today who is going to play right tackle for this team. Now, I don't feel the need to tell the right tackle story again, but I do feel the need to point out that they do not have a right tackle. And if you want to count J.C. Latham as a right tackle, that's fine. Then my question is, who's going to play left tackle? Here's the first thing that I will say, though. Nicholas Petit-Ferrer is not an option for me as a starter at tackle. Backup, we can have the discussion. But he is not an option at starter. And what worries me is something that I kind of brought up earlier this week in a different context, and everybody got mad. When I said, the Titans are betting a lot on these dudes with red flags. Kind of reminds me of what the last administration did that got themselves fired when it came to Caleb Farley's back and Julio Jones' hamstrings, and you know what I'm talking about. It's like, Devondre Sweat's got red flags. I know. You all think it'll be fine because it's, as Caroline said, and I think put it well yesterday, we are living in the it'll be fine season. But once you get to the season, it becomes an issue. But one thing that the previous administration did that I think hurt them as much as anything else is they went from having a legitimate plan on the offensive line to just winging it. And I would argue that the administration before that one got in trouble for just winging it on the offensive line. Now, Rustin Webster was the GM then, and I think Rustin Webster did care about the offensive line, but Ken Wisenhunt, was for that 1 year with Tommy Smith. I think Wisenhunt was kind of in control, and that dude couldn't plan his way out of a brown paper sack. But again, that year was the year that I asked Floyd, so the Titans going to be any good this year? And it was probably about this time of the year when I asked him, I said, hey, Floyd, you going to be any good this year? Don't have a right tackle. They started Jeremiah Patasi at right tackle. Jeremiah Patasi was a rookie that they took in the third round who played guard, and they moved him. They didn't have a right tackle. Didn't have a center. Didn't really have a right guard. Andy Levitri, their left guard, was terrible, and they had Lawan at left tackle. That's what they had. Then the Titans got a plan on the offensive line. I guess they had a right guard. It was Chance Warmack. But the Titans had a plan on the offensive line. John Robinson showed up. He signs Ben Jones, a real center. Kind of like Lloyd Cushenberry, who's a real center. They drafted Jack Conklin, a real right tackle. Eventually, They went out and bought a left guard, Roger Saffold, a real left guard. And all of a sudden, after the Titans used a third-round pick on Nate Davis to play right guard, a real right guard, and the third round is where you use picks to get guards, not 11th. They had a real offensive line. Lawan, a real left tackle. Saffold, a real left guard. Jones, a real center. Davis, a real right guard. And Conklin, a real right tackle. Then one by one, they started getting picked away, and the Titans were winging it. First, they let Jack Conklin walk in free agency so they could tag Derrick Henry. Makes sense. It is what it is. But they put Dennis Kelly in there at right tackle. The old man kept saying that Dennis Kelly was a backup. He just kept saying it. He's a backup. But Kelly was a good backup, so you got Bob. It's kind of starting to wing it. Then they released Dennis Kelly. And they drafted Dylan Radins. And they thought Dylan Radins or Kendall Lamb, again, a backup, could start at right tackle. They couldn't. David Quessenberry did. And again, he was a backup. So you're kind of winging it. So the offensive line went down a little bit. It wasn't as good. Then they released Saffold. Nate Davis walks in free agency. Lawan tears his ACL. And now you're winging it. A 270-pound guard. Ben Jones on his last legs at center. No right tackle because you let Quessenberry go without tendering him for an RFA. So you had no right tackle and no left guard, an injury liability at left tackle, and an old man at center. And guess what? Lawan tears his ACL. Now, because you don't have a backup tackle, because your backup tackles probably have to start at right tackle because Radins couldn't make it. Now you got a swing tackle who you acquired from Carolina because they didn't want him because he sucked so bad, Dennis Daly. A 270-pound left guard, a backup, a real center in Ben Jones, a real right guard in Nate Davis, and Nicholas Petit-Frere or Dylan Radins, and it ended up being Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
It ended up being PT at right tackle. Well, that helped get that GM fired. And then the next year, the Titans decided to give a pay raise to the 270-pound guard and move him to center. They decided to take a bust at left tackle and make him your left tackle. They decided to roll it back with PT at right tackle, even though he wasn't very good as a rookie. And they played a backup at right guard. Now, they did use a top 11 pick on the left guard, and maybe he'll be good. But that was absolutely winging it last year on the offensive line, and it was the worst offensive line that many of us have ever seen, which now takes us to today. They do have a real center. They do have a real left guard if he ends up working out, which he should. Like, he should work out, even though, again, you should never pick a guard that high. It should work out. They do have one legitimate tackle because they used the 7th pick on. Now, is he going to play left tackle, right tackle? Again, that's a different discussion, but again, there's only 2 tackles, and so if he's only one, so that would leave the other spot open, which means right guard, they're going to wing it. And right tackle, it feels like they're going to wing it. And that's where my anxiety exists. The winging it. That I don't like. And I know that you guys think that Bill Callahan is Jesus Christ and he can turn water into wine, and maybe he can. But I know that when he was in Cleveland, they went out and drafted a tackle and they signed Jack Conklin. So I'm not mad at the Titans for bringing in Tyler Boyd because I want Tyler Boyd. But when I see the talk Tyler Boyd, I'm thinking, who is gonna play right tackle? And my anxiety's starting to brew. 615-737-1025. We'll get your phones on this. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Stillman and Company. And Ian, I think we'll give away these Preds tickets this hour.
Cool.
I'm thinking that we may do that this hour, so be listening for your chance to win. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 the game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there, because I'm sure there is a lot to tell the fine folks out there here ahead of today's program. Let me tell all the fine folks to join us and local athletes and musicians at the Hermitage Golf Course for the 615 Open on June 20th. Make a difference while supporting Souls for Souls. Every $20 raised will go to a new pair of shoes for a local child experiencing homelessness. Sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com.
I mean, the way we really see it is in this game, you need two offensive tackles. The position is just offensive tackle at this point. All these kids, whether you started off at left or you started off at right in college, you know, these kids, when they start training for the combine, for their pro day, they train at both sides, and you get to see them at these combines and pro days playing from both sides, you know, in terms of switching up their stances. So it was a big part of it, but in this game now, most of the best rushers in the league now rush over the right tackle, so you have to have two in this league regardless.
That was Rand Carthon on Robbie and Joe earlier this week, and I agree. You need two tackles, and right now the Titans have J.C. Latham, and that's it. So they have one tackle. So if they need two tackles, they got one tackle. Now, I put out on Twitter, I was talking about, again, this my anxiety about who's going to play right tackle on this team. And somebody texted me NPF, or tweeted, I should say, tweeted me NPF, which I assume is Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, who is not called NPF on the show. Instead, he is called...
It's PT.
PT. And so, again, for the billionth time on this program, PT is not an option at all as a starter.
Why not?
Now, because he stinks.
Based on his rookie year
and his second year,
even though he got hurt.
Yes, like the gambling suspension is not a good thing. Like that's not, well, you know, he got suspended for gambling, so I mean, yeah, exactly. I can't rely on him. By the way, 66 pass snaps last year, according to Pro Football Focus for PT, 11 pressures. That's awful. Like,
was he mostly left or right last year?
I believe he was mostly left, and then he switched over to right in the Steeler game, and then he got hurt because J.J. Watt was too fast for him, and his arm basically came out of his socket.
So maybe if he goes back to the right side, it'll be a little bit better.
Even though he, again, got hurt because J.J. Watt was too fast for him.
Well,
or T.J. Watt.
Maybe he needs the offseason, preseason of working on the right side. Get back into the groove.
But he had that on the right side last year.
But then he went back to the left, and then he went back to the right. You know, snip, snap, back and forth.
I mean, if you want to believe this, you can believe it. I just don't. I just say he sucked as a rookie, and in the limited snaps he played last year, he sucked. And so, again, the data is telling us that he probably sucks. And if you say, okay, well, we think we can't, you know who you're talking about? That's what we said about Andre Dillard. If you do this, if you go into this year with PT as your starting right tackle, and he is Andre Dillard, which it is more likely than not that he is Dillard than it is that he is a starting caliber tackle. If that's what happens, you're screwed. Because that's what you did last year with Dillard, and you got screwed. Where you were just swapping spit, him and Jalen Duncan. Same old, same old. Now, can guys get better? Sure. Do I expect them to get that much better? And it's like, I feel the same way about Treylon Burks. Now, I think Burks has more talent than PT, but I do feel this kind of, if Treylon Burks does make it, if he does pop, then good. He'll take somebody else's spot. He'll take somebody ahead of him's spot. If PT pops, he'll take somebody's spot. And then it'll be good because that guy that you thought was going to start, who might be a starting caliber player, is now going to be your swing tackle.
What about this Leroy Watson they got in the trade with the Browns?
7 career games in the NFL, 0 starts. You want to start him at right tackle?
I'm just saying. I don't know. Is he an option?
No. No. That's my point. You guys want to take all these Scarbinis.
Then why did they bring him in? Just for bodies in camp?
Just maybe he's a backup. Just like Raidens is a backup. Just like PT's a backup. I mean, that's what these guys are, the backups. Brunskill's a backup. He was a backup in San Francisco, and then you signed him to start. That doesn't make him a starter. He's still a backup. I mean, that's the reality here, folks, is that when you take bad players and you say, you know what, maybe he'll be good. What are the odds that he is good? You know, the Atlanta Falcons, for instance, signed Kirk Cousins to play quarterback. Kirk Cousins can start. Am I the biggest Kirk Cousins fan in the world? Nope. But do I think that Atlanta can win games with Kirk Cousins at quarterback? Yes, I do. Why? Because he's done it. Because I know that Kirk Cousins can be a starting quarterback. If you were to take Mason Rudolph and say, you know what, let's start him, I would not think that you can win games. Why? Because he's a backup. And that's what backups do. And so when you decide that you're going to have a backup start, it's going to be Andre Dillard all over again.
Well, we're trusting Callahan with Latham, so maybe we should trust big coach here with Leroy Watson.
What? Well, hold on, wait a minute. We?
Yeah, the royal we, I should say.
Oh, I mean, the royal we thinks PT can start. I mean, again, you guys go ahead. You guys keep putting the crap bums out there and tell me what happens. And I know the Titans value talent, or else they wouldn't have paid all that money for all these other players. So I'm just telling you right now, when it comes to the Titans, you guys keep winging it on the offensive line. You guys keep winging it. You guys let David Quessenberry walk as a restricted free agent. You could have tendered for $2 million because you think Dylan Radins or Nicholas Petit-Frere can start. You do that. Go ahead.
And Shadiq Charles, strictly a guard?
He sucks. I mean, everything about him, again, this is taking bad players and saying, oh, no, we'll coach them up. I mean, that so rarely works. Where you take a bad player and you coach him up to be a good player. That's so rarely works. And again, his PFF grade was horrendous. And then when they signed him, because I remember, I think it was Diana Rossini that was like, it was late at night, and Diana Rossini tweeted out, was like, the Titans are signing Shadiq Charles per source. I'm like, who? So I Google it, and it's like, the 2023 season has told us that Shadiq Charles is a bust. It's like, oh, okay. But you guys keep bringing in Andre Dillard and see how that works out for you. Hal Gill will join us next. Again, we got some news on the Predators front that we will get to. And if you are superstitious, I have good news for you. And if you want to go to Game 6, you probably should be listening to the next segment too. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The game. Game 6 is tomorrow. Predators in Vancouver. I literally just got an email, and I believe this is an email for season ticket holders, not for media. This is an email that tomorrow the doors are going to open a special time, 3 o'clock prior to puck drop. That's 3 hours before puck drop. In order to allow fans to get there early, they want the building full at 6 o'clock. And with the Morgan Wallen concert downtown and with apparently bad weather, they want, hey, get there early. So come see us tomorrow. We'll be at Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena. And Ian, are you superstitious?
A little stitious, yeah.
Barry Trotz will join the program tomorrow at 4:30. And honestly, and we'll have a lot of hockey to talk with Barry, but I'm going to tell Barry straight up, I'm going to say, hey, man, the number one reason why you're on the show is because when you come on the show in this series, the team is 2-0. And when you don't, the team is 0-3. So they win the games that are on Tuesdays. So we're putting Barry Trotz on the show tomorrow at 4:30. And I'm not going to lie to you, Hal Gill joins us now in the program. And Ian, go ahead and X out the phones here, because I am, we'll unex the phones in a second. Hal, the reason why I wanted you today and not tomorrow during the game is because you came on the show last Friday and they lost. And again, it's not your fault. I just, with the superstition, I just said, no, let's do Hal on Thursday. And because they lost last time Hal came on.
It blows my mind that you have so much control over athletes and everything that goes on in an NHL hockey game. Especially
did you wear your lucky
game.
socks when you played? Did you wear your lucky? Did you have superstitions when you were a player?
I had a routine and I stuck with that. Yes, was it superstitious? Yeah, but I always, put on my equipment left to right. I'd have to eat toasted peanut butter and jelly at home, out of the same coffee mug. Just a regular routine. But, if I broke that routine, I didn't think that, the sky was falling. I wouldn't worry about it, but I'd stick to what I was doing. And I certainly wouldn't worry about, I never paid attention to when the GM had a radio interview with a certain guy. That never really entered my mind. But now that I know, I wish I did pay attention to that. I would have. Well, I'm just saying. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time trying to win a game when I know we can't win it because Jared didn't get an interview with Trotzy.
Well, what you're doing though is that, to me, the opposite of superstition, right? You're like, I want to eat my peanut butter sandwich, but if you lose, then it's like, well, I'm not eating the peanut butter sandwich. I'm eating the turkey. That's superstition. So you're not superstitious at all.
No, I don't believe in that. I believe in being prepared and doing the best I can and trying to win. Well,
I am a little superstitious.
I think the preparation is a little more important than whether I get, the same food.
They're all important, at least to me in the cosmos. Hal Gill's with us. Hal, let's send some people to Game 6. By the way, now that we have you on the program, I gave a code phrase out earlier today on the program. Ian, unex the phones. The first person to call Ian and give him the code word at 615-737-1025 the code phrase is going to Game 6 tomorrow night. Get there early. Let's start with this, Hal. Right now, this playoff series, it feels to me to be incredibly even. And it gives me hope that the Predators can pull this off, but it also makes me nervous that the margin for error is so small. How do you see kind of this series and where we are at Game 6?
Yeah, it's interesting because, you look over because you have, this is why you have a 7-game series, right? Because sometimes the hockey gods, even it out, and if it's one or two, a 3-game series, for example, I don't think is a good evaluation of the game because when you look at it, I feel like the Preds over 5 games have outplayed Vancouver for a majority of the time. But the bottom line is they have big players that make big plays, and they've done it in the first, 3 games where they made plays right at the right time, and they ended up winning. But the bottom line is I think the Preds have some big-time players that are going to make plays. It's just over a sample size. You have to it balances out. So I think the Preds are relying on the fact that they've carried the play. Now they just need to top it off with the big play at the right time.
You know what's crazy, Hal, is that I feel like this series has really been defined for the Predators, at least right now, as a lot of good play, a lot of positive things, and then just some bad breakdowns. and sometimes some unforced errors. And I'm not going to say that the 12 seconds in game one was an unforced error because it was Vancouver that was pushing the play, but some unforced errors there. I mean, in game four at the end. And then I really think, I thought it was a microcosm of Saros's performance the other night was that he was excellent the whole game. And then he, lets in a soft goal. And it's like, man, if they can just not make the mistakes, I feel good about it. And yet it feels like they'll do three good things and then do one bad thing. And it's the bad things that have me worried about tomorrow night.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Juice was phenomenal. And, you're saying he gives up a soft goal. And I think he so much has said, like, I've got to stop that. But there's no way in the world he's expecting Zadorov to go short side shelf as he's going down the wing. Zadorov was looking for a pass. He was looking for a play. It was taken away, so he just gave it a chance and threw it at the net, and it went in. And so, what is that a soft goal? Yeah, but that's hockey. I mean, Zadorov made a great play that no one was expecting him to make, and so that's what I mean. Like over a 7-game series, you assume that the Preds get a couple of those little breaks, and I think. Would you look at Demko? He gave up a soft goal, and Juice gave up a soft goal in game one, and I think that's kind of part of the game. That's just part of what you deal with, and then it's how do you adapt to it? How do you either change the momentum or keep the momentum going? I think that's all part of it. Mistakes are going to happen. It's how you recover from it, and this series has been full of mistakes. I think the Preds haven't made that many mistakes, and certainly not more than Vancouver. But they've been, they're on the short end of the stick, and sometimes mistakes end up in your net, and sometimes they don't.
Hal Gill is with us on the program. Predators tomorrow night, 6:00 start time. Is the power play fixed after that weird kind of crazy everybody crash the net goal that they had the other night?
I don't know if it's fixed, but I certainly liked it. And I'm not even referring to the goal. I love the goal because I love to see them just play it more 5-on-5 until they actually do get set up. Like just go play the game. Don't worry about trying to set up as quick as they do. They went through. Yost found a hole, a good play from Forsberg, and then they created that goal out of not necessarily a power play, but just a charging the net. We're going to go and score. And they're not thinking about power play setup at that point. And so I think that's where they got rewarded. But I thought they got a lot of momentum from the power play and a lot of good looks. Tyson Barrie got thrown to the Wolves and just like, hey, go ahead and play. We're not going to give you a heads up at all. And he went out there and looked really good on the power play, and the power play moved the puck well. They got good looks. So I'm certainly encouraged by it. But they need that power play to step up, and they need it to be a factor.
Hal Gill with us on the program. Sheloffs or Casey DeSmith, who would you rather see in between the pipes tomorrow? Which means who do you want them to play? Not who do you think they'll play or who's better, but I want them to play. Whichever guy's worse is who I want them to play. Which guy do you think that is?
I don't know. It always amazes me, and the NHL playoffs are a great time to make your stamp and let people know that you're legit. And it seems like DeSmith played really well and then gets pulled out, and sounded like it was almost a coach's decision to play Shelovs, and Shelovs has played really well too. So, in the end, it all, careers are defined by how many plays you make, how many games you play well, right? But in this situation, if one guy's hot, and then he's the better goalie, I think that's what Tocchet is looking for, is who's the hot hand and how can I ride him? And, I'd like to think that Shelovs would be the guy we'd want to face off against because he's got less experience, but DeSmith, both of them have looked good. So I don't really have a right answer, and I guess I don't decide anyway, so what does it matter? But I think this is going to be an interesting call, and we'll see which way Tocchet goes with it.
So I found this to be fascinating, Hal, and I believe it was the chat you and Pete had with Tyson Barrie the other night, about how for a 7:00 puck drop, Tyson Barrie shows up to the arena on what's called the Scratches bus at 6:20. Like, that's what time, even if you're not going to be in the game, you don't get to the arena until 6:20, and then he gets out there on the ice.
Yeah, generally there's a like a 4:00 bus. Most guys want to be there at 5. There's a handful of guys that'll go there. I think Ryan O'Reilly likes to be there at like 3:30. McDonough likes to be there early. But for the most part, guys will get on a 4:00 bus or a 4:30 bus. So they're either getting there at around, let's say 4:30, or they're getting there around 5, let's say. And so that's a long time to hang out if you're not playing. If you're going to take warm up, of course you want to be there early. But so for a guy like Tyson Barrie, who he knew he wasn't playing, that 6:00 bus is a lot better. He can go and enjoy his day. And as he said, he just got his dog in town and bringing him back to his parents and his house out there. And so he was got to spend some time walking his dog, and then just got thrown into the fire right when he got off the bus. So it's kind of a crazy story, but I thought he played really well. So a good story in the end.
Yeah, I don't want him coming out of the lineup, but I listened to our morning show today, and they all said that if Luke Shin's healthy, they would take him out of the lineup. I don't want him out of the lineup, Hal. I liked him on the power play. I feel like maybe that his, lack of size might actually be a good compliment against the Vancouver's size. I don't know. I want Barrie in the lineup, but I feel like I'm in the minority there.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tyson Barrie is a great player in the fact that he can run a power play. He moves the puck really well. He does, like you said, he doesn't have the size that Luke Schenn has, and he's not going to defend the front of the net the way Luke Schenn would. So it's a tough decision. I think there's an offensive upside, and I think certainly Tyson Barrie played well enough to get a look, to have Brunette have to make a decision. But I think it's something that they have to look at and weigh. What's the upside of Schenn and what's the upside of Tyson Barrie? What's the downside for either, and then make a decision. But I think Tyson Barrie did a good job of making it a decision.
Hal, great stuff as always. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I do just wonder this, I got the email for the season ticket holders that said be in the building, that the doors open at 3:00. They want the fans there, knowing there's a concert, knowing there may be bad weather. How important is it to you as a player, not, you, the broadcaster, to see a building full, but as a player for a game 6, how important is it? Like, is there kind of a pep talk that for the fans, like, hey, I know everybody's got their own stuff to do, and I know you're the ones paying to be there, but it really would be important for the team if you're in your seats when it's time to drop the puck?
I think it matters. I think there's a feeling, what it's interesting is if you look at the playoff record for Toronto, it's just abysmal at home. They played so poorly at home. I think they're like 4-15. It's awful over the last few years. They just can't win at home. And in large part, I think it's because I played there, and in certain times of the game, there's no fans in the stands. And when you get the momentum sucked out of you by having a dead crowd, I feel like when you have the crowd buzzing, I feel like the other team, the road team, is looking around going, oh, we're in one now. They're going to get going, and they get on their heels, and it helps you get going. I think as a player, if you're there in warm-ups and people are banging the glass and they're fired up, it matters. It really does. And I know it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't really affect you. You should go and play the same game anyway. But when you have crowd either on top of you yelling at you when you're on the road, it affects you then, and it affects you when they're at home. So I would suggest everyone get there early, have a couple pops, and then slide on over and get ready for an early start, which is going to be a little bit of a different wrinkle. I have my own opinions on that because sometimes that just messes with your clock all day, right? It's like it's only 1 hour, but it messes with your mind, and so you have to adjust and try to figure that out. But I think it does matter. To answer your question, fans, come out early, get fired up, and let's go get a Game 6 win.
Max Hurst will be signing autographs in Barrel House for those who arrive early. I'm kidding.
Yes.
Hal, great stuff. Appreciate you as always.
Appreciate you, pal. Enjoy. Cheers.
Yep. Hal Gill on the program on today instead of tomorrow because I am superstitious, and Hal came on last Friday and they lost. And Barry Trotz, again, they're 2-0 in Barry because he'll be on the show tomorrow at 4:30 just because, hey, Hal may not be superstitious, but I am. And so whatever it takes. 615-737-1025. Speaking of the Vancouver goalie situation, Elliot Friedman told the Midday Show what he's hearing, and I might like it. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 to the game.
Well, I think the biggest question is going to be what happens in net. Like, I don't know what he's going to do here. I guess DeSmith, but, some people warned me, don't be surprised if it's Shilovs again. Talkett seems to really like Shilovs, and even though he didn't start the series as the backup. So, to me, that's the number one decision is what are they doing in goal? And the last I checked today, they hadn't announced anything, so we'll see where this is going to go. So that's the big decision.
That was Elliot Friedman on the midday show today, and he was saying, like, I think it'll be DeSmith, but I'm hearing don't be surprised if it's Shilovs. I think it's going to be DeSmith only because I want it to be Shilovs. And again, I haven't studied these guys and broken it down by what the analytics say, who's been the better goalie in the series and everything else and whatnot. But John Smoltz said on a baseball broadcast one time, he said, don't ever do anything that makes the other team happy. If the other team wants you to bunt, don't bunt. Think about this. Put yourself in that position. Would you want them to bunt here? Okay, then don't bunt. Don't do something that makes the other team happy. It would make me happy if they made the choice to play Shilovs tomorrow night over Casey DeSmith. And I'll tell you why. First of all, I think both guys are incredibly generic. I think they're both very average. I think that DeSmith is a legitimate NHL backup goalie. Like, I think that he is, like a starting quarterback in the NFL, a backup quarterback in the NFL. He is Mason Rudolph. Nobody will argue that Mason Rudolph is a starting caliber goalie, right? He's not one of these guys that, oh yeah, bring him in there and let him battle it out for the starter spot. No, he's a backup. That's DeSmith. But you're getting a certain level of performance with a backup. And Shilovs was an average goalie this year in the AHL. He may not even be an NHL goalie. Plus, not that it was a big sample size, but when they played this year in the NHL, Shilovs had worse numbers than DeSmith. And I think DeSmith played pretty well in Game 3. I don't think Shilovs played very well in Game 4, and I certainly don't think he played very well in Game 5. So just because of that, I am expecting DeSmith tomorrow. I hope it is Shilovs. Donovan says, I think the Preds are getting screwed on the start time. Not only their rhythms, but also the fact that their fans cannot get there and get all fired up because they're going to barely be able to get there on time to begin with from work. Everybody else gets the privilege in their home arena of starting at 7 o'clock, which benefits the momentum of the fans and the alcoholic beverages fired up, etc. The Predators are again being screwed because half the seats will be empty for the start of the game as people slowly arrive. It sucks, he says. It'll be impossible for him to fight the traffic to get there on time, and he's very disappointed in the start time at 6 o'clock. I would advise that you would, and I hope that your boss would understand that. I mean, again, it's not really fair for me to, I empathize with that. I don't have that problem because I'll be at the arena at 1 o'clock tomorrow, but I empathize with everybody else that does have that problem. And I mean, it does suck, but that's the reality of playing in the Western Conference is you're going to start at either 6 o'clock because then there's going to be a 9 o'clock game, or you're going to start at 9 o'clock. And that the idea of starting at 7 o'clock doesn't exist in the Central Time Zone because if you're in the Eastern Time Zone, you're going to be playing at 6, which is 7 Eastern. So I just think it's something we all got to suck up. By the way, in that email they sent to season ticket holders that I got, for those of you that care about this, and I know a lot of you do, I do not, but I know a lot of you do. It says at the bottom, the pregame playoff show starts at 5:45. It says run to your seats by 5:45 for the best pregame playoff show in town. And run and town are all capsed out. All attendees tomorrow will receive a Preds rally towel. Ian, are you picking up what they're putting down?
Yes, I think so.
They're bringing the Run This Town song back tomorrow, so be excited about that. Chad Withrow from Outkick, he'll join us in large part because of the early start time. We're moving Chad to today from tomorrow. Barry Trotz will be tomorrow at 4:30. We'll talk to Chad up next here on the program. Let's talk about the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Fellas, put this off for way too long. It's time to get it done and move forward with your sex life. And the Tennessee Men's Clinic is the leader in bedroom confidence. The reality is pills often quit working and guys start making excuses for not coming to bed. Did you know that studies show that men will be more irritable and argumentative before bed just to avoid failing at intimacy. And yes, I know many of you hate going to the doctor, but the Tennessee Men's Clinic was created in 2014 to take care of guys just like you. For a decade, the urologists and the providers of the Tennessee Men's Clinic have helped guys with ED and weight loss, and they now even offer aesthetic enhancements and cosmetic procedures. Their ED and weight loss treatments truly change lives with no surgery, and they are seeing success rates as high as 90%. That's right. They specialize in seeing guys who think they're out of luck regain hope that they can be successful in the bedroom and beyond. Guys, it's time to feel amazing and hit your goals this year. Stop thinking about it and get in there today. Call 615-208-9090. That's 615-208-9090. Or go online to the TennesseeMen'sClinic.com to book an appointment today. That's TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios. We're at First Horizon Park, where the Sounds are taking on the Norfolk Tide today at 6:35. Tons of great seats available for the game tonight, and they'll have games all throughout the weekend. Tomorrow, Preds pregame will be on with a 6 o'clock start, which means Chad Withrow joins us today on the program at 5 o'clock from Outkick. Chad, Mel Kiper does not think highly of the Titans draft. He gives them a C+. The Athletic ranks at 26th. Matt Miller at ESPN said it was his least favorite draft class. Pro Football Focus gave the Titans the award for the biggest reaches on day 1 and day 2, and Sports Illustrated said it was one of the 4 worst drafts, with Atlanta, Denver, Carolina, and Tennessee. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that trying to give out grades right after is futile in a lot of ways when you think about how long you have to wait until you really know how good a draft class is. But it's something every single place that covers drafts will do, and we're going to react to the draft also. I mean, I haven't looked at the entire league to say where they rank, but I didn't like what they did in the first round. So I think a lot of these places probably just look at the first round, and if they don't like it, then the entire class is going to get a bad grade. I can see that with the Falcons and the decision to draft Michael Penix Jr. when you already paid $100 million to Kirk Cousins. So I don't really think much of it. I just like to think about what my opinion is of the draft. And I don't like that, once again, the Titans drafted a right tackle to play left tackle when a year ago they drafted a kid who was playing tackle in college to play guard and used a high pick on a guard. And now they want to switch someone to another side. I hope it works out for the Titans, but I know I didn't like the first-round pick.
What do you make of the second-round pick? Because that's the one they're really getting killed for, is Trevondre Sweat, Outland Trophy winner at Texas. I mean, I always like a fat guy that's got feet. He's fat. He's got feet. The problem is he's too fat, and he got a DWI, 3 weeks or whatever before the draft, and so there are serious red flags with him. Again, 3rd-round grade from Mel Kiper, 4th-round grade from Dane Brugler. He was ranked 114th on Daniel Jeremiah's big board, and the Titans not only didn't trade down, but they took him at 38, and they believe in the player. What do you think?
I mean, that's actually the pick that I kind of liked from the Titans. Out of all the, probably my favorite pick, because, I mean, it's hard to replicate grizzly bear-like players, right? And we've seen that with Big Jeff, with Jeffrey Simmons. Those guys are hard to find that are that massive, that possess that much mass and that much quickness and athleticism. And Trevondre Sweat is one of those guys. Now, he needs to lose a little bit of weight, but I also think he's one of the rare guys who can play at a very heavy weight and play well and be pretty durable at that weight. So I love the player. I mean, I absolutely love the player and where he was at 38. I feel like he's the type of guy who's likely a first-rounder, if not for the DWI, 3 weeks before the draft. So I do like that pick if you feel like, hey, he made a mistake. That's not who he is. He can put it behind him. I actually think that's a really good pick to take. If I'm looking at the draft and I'm saying, this is the right pick at the right time, I like the DB from Louisville, and I like Trevondre Sweat in that spot more than anything else for the Titans in this draft.
My thing with Sweat is that, I always say this before the draft, is I always say, dumb guys stay dumb, fat guys stay fat, and injured guys stay injured. And I usually use that third part as probably the most important reason to say something like that. But, I'm worried about 1 and 2 with Sweat. I mean, I am. There were maturity concerns coming out. And again, it supposedly he played at 380. He's down to 366. The Titans want him at 350. I mean, I think it was Trevor said on the show earlier this week, you can't play in the NFL at 380. They'll just run you out off the field if you get in there at 380. And I'm worried about it, Chad, as a guy who I would say I classify myself as a bigger guy. It is hard to lose the weight, and that worries me.
So, I mean, I look back. He didn't have any other issues while at Texas, right? Just DWI leading up to the draft. There were no.
So apparently there were. So apparently the weight is the number one concern. But the second thing was, there was some stuff that maybe he's kind of a class clown, doesn't love football, that. But who knows if that's bullcrap or not.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think that Albert Haynesworth loved football, but Albert Haynesworth was a damn good player for the Titans.
But the problem with
he
Albert
was here
Hainsworth
and dominant.
is that if Albert Hainsworth wasn't lazy, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was on YouTube the other day and I watched the 2002 draft, which was Hainsworth, and I just fast forwarded to the Titans. And he went off the board, and Chris Mortensen, God rest his soul, said on the broadcast, Hainsworth would have gone in the top 10 if NFL teams didn't think he was lazy. And honestly, the thing that hurt the reason Albert Hainsworth doesn't have a gold jacket today, in my opinion, is because he was lazy.
Yeah, because he didn't really love football, I don't think. I think Albert Hainsworth was just blessed with a body and athleticism where he was a great football player at that position. I don't know that he ever really loved the game. And I'm friends with Albert. There were probably stretches where he did, but I just think that some guys are so physically blessed to be able to do things at a large size that they're really good at something. And interior defensive lineman in the NFL, you don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar. So if he's dumb, I don't really care about that. Now, you do have to have the ability to not get arrested. Okay? So he did get arrested leading up to the draft, right? Like, you can do stupid stuff, and you got to be smart enough to not get arrested. But you don't have to be that smart. If he's a class clown, that doesn't really bother me, as long as he can show up to work and be the player that he was at Texas. I've got high hopes for him. I actually think that was a good move. And it kind of goes to show you, everybody's talking about Jim Harbaugh. We had David Shaw on our show, and he was talking about Jim Harbaugh loves the big guys. He loves to start of the offensive line and build out. So look for him to draft Joe Alt. He said it the day before the draft. He said I believe he will draft an offensive lineman, probably Joe Alt, because that's how he likes to start. It's clear the Titans love big boys. They love big guys, right? They go Skoronski a year ago. They go J.C. Latham, then they go with Tavondre Sweat. So they love to draft the big guys high on the board, and that's where they place a premium. And I think that Tavondre Sweat can be an elite player if some of those other issues that you mentioned, if he can stave those off a little bit. And I don't need him to be thin. I don't need him to lose 40 pounds.
No.
The question is, can you lose 10, 15, 20 pounds? Right?
Yeah, no. He needs to be fat. But
yeah,
he needs to be fat. He just doesn't need to be too fat. Chad Withrow with us on the program from Outkick. What do you make? The Titans are hosting Tyler Boyd for a visit. I laughed out loud because I felt like, Brian Callahan was pumping up Treylon Burks and how great he's been this offseason. And Rand Carthon went on Robbie and Joe and talked about, how he's excited for Treylon Burks. And here they are bringing in another receiver after they signed Calvin Ridley to a $50 million contract. That said, I love the idea of Tyler Boyd on the team because I think Tyler Boyd's a reliable slot receiver, which this team does not have. What do you make of it?
I think it shows their complete lack of confidence in Treylon Burks. I'm with you there. I think it's a surefire sign of that. And it's absolutely an upgrade. And here's the great thing about the Titans right now. They have the luxury to, quote-unquote, overpay guys. That's what they did with Calvin Ridley. That's what they did with Cushenberry. That's what they're probably going to have to do with Tyler Boyd. And that's fine. If you have a lot of cap space and you have the ability to do it when you need positions like that. And I'm with you. I don't think he's a great player. I think he's a really good, solid, reliable slot receiver, and that's exactly what the Titans need right now. And it's a guy who can help, make them competitive within the AFC South. So I'm all for it. I also think the other side of this is he's really going to help Will Levis. I think he's the type of player that can help a young quarterback. So yeah. I'm all for them doing this, and I'm all for them moving on from Treylon Burks as fast as possible, which I think they're showing. They're tipping their hat with some of their moves that they don't have the most confidence in Burks.
Do they need to go get another tackle to go with J.C. Latham, or are you fine with, Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, Dylan Radence, Jalen Duncan, the crew that's sucked in the past?
They should have drafted another tackle. So let's start there. That's one reason I'm not so high on the draft. I joked last Friday when I joined you, Jared, that, now draft a left tackle. You drafted a right tackle, go and draft a left tackle in the second round. So I still think because you're asking a guy to move after college to a different position, there's going to be some big-time growing pains there to go along with the growing pains of being a rookie in the NFL. I think that's a tough spot for J.C. Latham to be in. I don't like where they are at right tackle right now. Yes, I think they need to add a tackle. I wish they would have done it in the draft at some point.
Chad Withrow is with us from Outkick. The hot seat is next, including, again, something I brought up earlier today that got a lot of people mad at me. We'll see what Chad thinks. We'll do that next here on the program. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. Have you ever had a contractor come into your home and it taking forever? Yes. You feel like you've wasted your whole day when you do that. Not with Hiller. Because when you call Hiller or do what I do, go to happyhiller.com, you don't have to camp out all day waiting. It's usually a 2-hour window, and they're pretty good about calling you straight up saying, hey, so-and-so is coming. He'll be there at this time, and then you can see him on the map and you can follow it. And it is, again, a very enjoyable experience. Be a happy camper this month with 0% interest financing for 24 months on select HVAC systems, generators, and tankless water heaters. Or take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning special. Take care of your home systems before the peak summer temperatures hit soon. Visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters, the Preds, Falls, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Chad Withrow with us from Outkick. It is hot seat time for Chad Withrow. Chad, do you have a thought, or do you want to get right to the hot seat?
Let's get right to the hot seat.
Okay. I angered many of people earlier this week after hearing Rand Carthon go on the other radio station and say that a general manager had told him that had they not taken Tavondre Sweat, he would have taken Tavondre Sweat, that being the general manager, saying that he says that he got text messages and calls from teams saying after that they took their guy, and he said how many texts and calls there were saying, we're taking him with our next pick, great pick. However, as texter Dustin in Nashville pointed out, Rand Carthon said the same thing on the same station about Colton Dowell last year, saying he got 6 texts from 6 teams that said that Dowell was their guy that the head coach coveted or a guy that they were going to take in the 7th round. And as Rand said, quote, it just shows that he was well thought of. And said the same thing on a different show about Peter Skoronsky, saying, quote, it was cool to get texts from buddies of teams in your area saying, oh, that was our guy. Had this person not been there, we were going to take Skoronsky. Chad, do you buy Rand Carthon's eerily similar story of getting texts from GMs and teams around the league about 3 separate players?
Well, this is where I do miss doing a local Nashville radio show, because if I were still doing a show, I would be playing the audio of all of these different things on the show, and we'd be having a discussion about it with callers about the same thing being said and whether or not people buy it or not. This is ridiculous. Like, this is such a cheap way out if you could just say something without having to prove it and then, act like, hey, this is this is a big deal. I promise. I'm really good. I coach my daughter's 8U travel softball team. Sorry, I'm getting a call right now, and I'm trying to reject it, so it stops beeping. I coach my daughter's 8U travel softball team, okay? And I promise there's a point to this that I'll tie into it. If every time a parent came to me with some sort of complaint about my coaching, and all I had to say was, hey, I talked to 3 or 4 other unnamed coaches in the area that coach other travel softball teams, and they all tell me that I am getting the absolute most out of my team and that I'm one of the best coaches around, and that if they ever had an opening on their staff, they would add me in a heartbeat. And I wouldn't tell the person who they were that was complaining about it. I'm just saying, just trust me on this. Everybody knows how great I am at this. In fact, they're all waiting to hire me. They want me to go coach their daughters, and they want their daughters to be on my 8U travel softball team. Just trust me, I'm the best around. While I may or may not be the best around, that's for every parent and player to decide for themselves. That would be a pretty cheap way out of a conversation, right? And a pretty cheap way just to act like everybody loves your pick and all the picks are A-pluses and no one should question it because someone else in the league would have taken it right after we did. So we know we did the smart and right thing by doing that. I think that's a pretty easy and cheap route out of a conversation about a player, to just drop that into a conversation in back-to-back years about different players.
So to answer your question about, if I was doing it, we'd be taking calls. We did earlier today. I think this is just my straw poll. I think 50% think it's bullcrap. Like when Rand's like, oh, yeah, I got a text from a team that said they were going to take Colton Dowell. It's like, okay. 40% think
by the way, which means, Jared, and good for you by doing that, which means 70% of Titans fans believe it's bullcrap.
Oh, no. I'd say it's higher than that. So I'd say 50
percentage. Well, I'm saying there's a good percentage even that will always defend the team or the GM that may be defending it and saying, oh, he's probably telling the truth, that deep down even believe. Even ones that say they believe Rand Carthon on this are probably deep down saying, yeah, it's a pretty cheap way out of an explanation, and anyone could just say that without any proof and make it look like their pick was smarter than maybe it was.
So 50% is bullcrap. I'd say 40% think it's bullcrap, but they're mad at me for for bringing it up. And then 10%, they're just mad at me. I don't know if they think it's true or not. I would tell you the rundown there. There was not anybody who was banging the table saying Rand's telling the truth.
Well, it shows me that you're doing a pretty good job with your show, because if no one is mad at you then you're probably not doing a great job hosting a show. So, people can be mad all they want. I don't think that's any reason to be mad. That's an honest conversation to have. And I just think it's pretty easy, all right? I mean, low-hanging fruit is still fruit, and you can eat it, and it can be nutritious. But that's pretty low-hanging fruit for one Rand Carthon to throw out there, to just say anonymous scout or anonymous GM sent me a text right as I picked it, said, boy, I'm mad that you drafted our guy on that one.
Yeah.
They could also
I know every national guy's killing you for reaching on Tavondre Sweat, but you're like, no. This GM told me that he would have taken him too, so I'm right, you're wrong.
Well, also, there's so much subterfuge and almost espionage within the draft process that how do we know those texts aren't trying to give Rand Carthon confirmation on a pick that everyone believes to be bad? Right? Like, hey, good job.
You mean like every SEC coach going to the podium saying that Kevin Stallings was a good coach the year that Kevin Stallings was in trouble? It's like every coach, Calipari, Pearl, Barnes, after every game, it was like the dumbest thing they could do would be to fire Kevin Stallings.
Or, SEC coach talking about a transfer player and saying, oh, he's great. No headaches, no problem at all. When talking to, and maybe the guy could be from. And maybe they want that guy on that team because that's competition in recruiting against them. I mean, just that stuff like that. I don't know how anyone can really buy it and say, man, I've completely changed my opinion of the Tavondre Sweat pick because Rand Carthon told me on the flagship station of his team that another GM or scout that he would not name sent him a text message and said, boy, you got our guy right before we picked him. I'm not buying that one bit.
Okay, number 2. Dane Brugler's 2025 mock draft is out at The Athletic, and it has the Titans drafting Carson Beck out of Georgia with the number 2 pick. Now, he's basing it off the betting odds, which have the Titans as the second worst team in the league. So it's not his opinion, it's the betting odds. But if you had to bet your house 5 years from now, who's the better quarterback, Will Levis or Carson Beck?
Ooh, I'm going to say Carson Beck. I think Carson Beck is the better quarterback, and here's why. Carson Beck right now, I know it's a long way away, but he is a pretty consensus top 5 to top 10 pick in all the very way too early 2025 mock drafts. Will Levis was a second-round pick. Will Levis dropped to the second round for a reason. I think we saw some of those reasons in his first year. I think we saw some of the reasons that he at one point was projected as the number 1 overall pick in that draft that year, this past season also. But if I'm going with just the ceiling of both players from what I see right now, I would put my money on Carson Beck. But that's not to say that I'm overly confident in that pick, because I'm also not the biggest Carson Beck fan, but obviously I'm not the biggest Will Levis fan either.
Yeah, I actually, as you were talking, I was like, Beck is kind of number 1 quarterback on everybody's board, but I'm not really a huge Carson Beck guy. And then you say that, followed up. Okay, the next one. Did the NHL screw the Predators with a Friday night 6:00 start instead of the traditional post-work 7:00 start or later, especially given a Morgan Wallen concert at the same time downtown?
So if the Preds lose, is that 6 or 7 straight home playoff losses?
Let's see. 1 to Carolina, 2 to Colorado, and then 3 would be 6.
This would be 6 straight home playoff losses. Think about that run in 2017. Or think about early Preds postseason.
9-2 in the 2017 postseason.
I mean, but just almost unthinkable, right? Like you just felt like, well, it's going to come back to Nashville and they're going to win. And then it's going to go back and the series is going to be at this, right? You really thought that way with this building and a home ice advantage. I say that to say I don't know what the home ice advantage is right now for this team after they completely choked on Sunday in that Game 4. So I don't know what it is one way or the other. I don't think the league screwed them. I don't think the league cares about a Morgan Wallen concert. By the way, Morgan Wallen's playing tonight, and downtown, I just left downtown Nashville. It is crawling with jean shorts and cowboy hats right now. I mean, it is going to be packed. So it's definitely going to be a factor with traffic, and it's going to be an odd mix of groups of people with Morgan Wallen across the river, and then Preds playoff game 6 on this side of the river. So, yeah, it's a little bit wild, but no, I don't think the NHL screwed anybody with it. I think the Preds have kind of screwed the fans, quite frankly, with possibly losing 6 straight home playoff games, which is pretty unacceptable.
Well, and I'd say they screwed themselves by blowing the game the other night in just miraculous fashion. Okay.
Tough.
Should the U.S. government,
by the way,
or
it's
local
nothing to do with the team and the atmosphere. Like I heard your discussion earlier this week about it. Like I think the game management, all that stuff. I mean, say what you want about the Preds. I think pretty much everything they do is top notch from an in-arena standpoint. So I don't think the team has anything to do with that. I'm sorry, I don't think the production crew, the front office has anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I think a team on the ice has something to do with it.
Okay. Should the U.S. government or local governments, because the Department of Justice was the entity that forced Disney to divest the regional sports networks, which became Bally Sports, should the government get involved regarding local television and cable contracts for sports teams who play in publicly financed stadiums and received antitrust exemptions?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's time for someone to get involved, and I think for the reasons you said, that the government probably should. It's the biggest racket going. I mean, if you want to pay the money, if you have the money and you want to pay the money to watch your team play in the highest levels of professional sports, it should not be this difficult to see them. If you are a paying subscriber to Comcast or DirecTV or name the cable company, you should be able to pick the sports you want to watch and watch them and not be subject to blackouts, not be subject to contract disputes with one network, with one cable company. I think it's just insane. Like, even if you have, I'm pretty sure even if you have the app, I know this is this way with ESPN also, but like, let's say you have the Bally's app. You can't watch it there either because I think you have to log in through your cable subscriber with the app, and they're going to block you out of that too. There's too much power there, and it goes against the consumer. And the rules of economics, the rules of capitalism, go back to the consumer. And when there's competition, it's supposed to make it better for the consumer. And if you have the money and you're willing to pay it, even when cable fees are too high right now, you need to get the product, especially if you're one of the major professional sports in our country. I have this same issue with Braves baseball or with other Major League Baseball teams. Anytime you bring this issue up, you get people from all over the country giving you their horror stories about not being able to watch their favorite team that's 75 miles away from them for one reason or another. It's just insanity, and it needs to end.
So I was thinking about this because basically Major League Baseball, and baseball is the straw that stirs the drink here. Hockey and basketball are important, but the inventory is double for baseball than it is the other sports. And like baseball's blackouts are the worst. Now, the blackouts exist in all of them. But if there's legislation that's passed that ends the local blackouts, of streaming services, that kind of thing, so that everybody could just get MLB TV, NHL TV, whatever, and you're just paying NHL TV, well, then I don't think there's anything that the cable companies or anybody else could say if the government says, no, we're not doing this. If you live in Iowa and you can't even get the Milwaukee Brewers on TV and you pay for the baseball package, you get to watch the Brewers, period. And I know that people are like, well, there's much bigger things for them to focus on. I don't think that this is out of church for the government to get involved in on this.
No. And by the way, there are far less significant things than this that the government focuses on all the time.
That's
right?
true.
So like
on
this
this element,
higher on the list than a lot of the things that government focuses on at times. Here's the other thing: we want bipartisan support, and we want both parties to work more together. I'd love to see that happen. This is something everyone can agree on, right? For that person that's in Iowa, that could be a pretty split state politically. I think everyone can agree that if this Milwaukee Brewers fan wants to watch their team in Des Moines, Iowa, they should have the rights to do that and not have interference from MLB, cable companies, whatever. I think everybody could get behind this. But just to simplify it, let's simplify it. If you want to watch your favorite Major League Baseball team for every game, it needs to be very, very simple to do so. And it's way too complicated right now. And the fact that in 2024, you can be blocked out of watching any game you choose to watch in Major League Baseball, especially if your team is asinine.
Which takes me to this last one for you on the hot seat. What will happen to Major League Baseball when their cash cow, which is local television revenue, ends up dying?
They better hope for billions from Apple or Amazon or a company like that. I mean, I really do see a world where Major League Baseball basically partners with Apple, and Apple becomes a big owner. You know, they basically buy into ownership of Major League Baseball and the teams, and all the games and all the teams are on Apple TV. And you can go in and, Jared, you and I as Braves fans, we can go in and pick the Braves for the season and pay a certain amount of money to get every single Atlanta Braves game, let's say. And it's all going to be through Apple. And Apple's going to control all the rights to it. I could see one of these tech giants being the sole carrier of all Major League Baseball games. I believe that's where it's likely headed. Or, you know, Apple or Amazon or maybe even, you know, ESPN and Disney, someone, they're just going to partner with Major League Baseball, where Major League Baseball creates their own streaming platform where that's going to happen, where you're going to pay a la carte for games or for teams, and that's how you're going to get your Major League Baseball, and they're going to hope to make their money that way, but I think it's going to be very difficult.
Problem is that the demographics of baseball are really for older people, and the streaming is kind of not the older people, and I think there may be a strike, you know, because of how much money they make on the local television, you know, how it's a free lunch because like my grandmother in Florida has been paying for Marlins games for forever and has never once watched them play. But that's what happened in 91 when CBS pulled out of the deal. And then all of a sudden, you know, they ended up striking in 94, but make of that what you will. Chad Withrow on the hot seat. Chad, great stuff as always.
So much fun, Jared. We'll talk to you next week.
Yep, Chad Withrow on our program. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. So I want to go down the rabbit hole because Charles Robinson said something today on Robbie and Rex Road about the Titans draft. It's kind of the thing that the Titans said after they drafted J.C. Latham, after Joe Alt was on another team. And I wonder if it's true. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game.
If you made me bet right now money and they were both there, I would guess the Titans would have taken Alt, but I don't know that for sure. How about you? You had to bet on it.
I think it depends on who they would have listened to, and if son listens to father, I think that Latham ends up being the pick, even if both are there at number 7. I truly believe that. I think that had Alt been on the board, it's not a slam dunk that Alt would have been the choice at number 7. I think Bill Callahan really, really liked Latham.
There you go. Charles Robinson saying, hey, if Joe Alt was on the board at 5 and the son had listened to dad, that he would have made the pick of J.C. Latham over Joe Alt. We were talking about this with TD earlier today, which was the anxiety that I feel when it comes to picking topics, right? Like this topic. Is it a Titans topic? Could it be a Preds topic? How many people would listen to a Titans topic? How many people would listen to a Preds topic? I don't know. And I can't go back and do it. I can't say, okay, well, let's make the 542 segment that day a Preds topic and see how many people listen compared to making it a Titans topic. And that's the anxiety that I live with on a daily basis. Ian, you know this anxiety all too well.
Sure.
Well, we'll never know what will have happened had Joe Alt been on the board with the 7th overall pick for the Titans to draft J.C. Latham. But boy, I want to know what they would have done. Now, there's a handful of people over there that know, right? The owner knows. The GM knows. The coach knows. Chad Brinker, and he's the president. He knows. I don't know how many other people know. But I would have loved to have seen what would have happened with this fan base after all the Joe Alt humping that was done. Not just by me, though. I did a lot of it. But the Joe Alt humping, the excitement the fan base had for Joe Alt had he been there with the 7th pick and the Titans taking J.C. Latham. Because it came out as soon as they made the pick. Diana Rossini tweeted out, Bill Callahan loves J.C. Latham. And as soon as the fans saw that, it was like, I trust Bill Callahan. He's the best. Don't you trust Bill Callahan, Jared? And I'm like, well, Bill Callahan has nothing to do with picking J.C. Latham over Brock Bowers, which is what I'm not happy with. But, I mean, look, the only reason I think J.C. Latham is going to be able to play left tackle is because Bill Callahan's coached this team. But let me just say this. I went crazy anyways when they drafted J.C. Latham, regardless of who the line coach was or whatever narrative was spun. But I can only imagine what would have happened if it had been Alt on the board. And if that's the case, Alt's on the board and Bill Callahan is telling his son, I want the other guy. What's Brian Callahan do? And who makes that pick? Does Rand Carthon make that pick? Does the president, Chad Brinker, make that pick? Who makes the pick? Is it a committee and they vote on it? All right, everybody for Alt, say aye. Aye. Everybody for Latham, say aye. Aye. Oh, we're deadlocked. I don't know. But I could not imagine the fan reaction, the uproar, if they had taken J.C. Latham over Joe Alt. And yet at the same time, the thing that you guys are, and I say you guys, but the thing that a lot of people are absolutely fired up about is the fact that, well, Bill Callahan loves this guy. But would you have felt that way if you had picked J.C. Latham over Joe Alt because Bill Callahan loves that guy? You see what I'm saying? It's easy now when Alt's not there to say, oh, well, Bill Callahan thinks it, so let's do it. But when Alt's there and Bill Callahan loves Latham, then what do you do? And again, we'll never know the answer because they will never tell us. But I think there's a chance they would have taken J.C. Latham over Joe Alt. I think there's a really good chance they would have taken J.C. Latham over Joe Alt. And I'll tell you, there's 2 reasons why. Number one, the J.C. Latham smokescreen from the Chargers at 5. I wonder if they did that to get the Titans to call. I wonder if they kept saying, we'll take J.C. Latham. to get let's see if the Titans will call. Let's see if the Titans will pick up the phone. Let's see if the Titans will call. Let's see if the Titans will say, hey, we'll offer you a fourth. We'll offer you 106 to move up from 7 to 5, and we can get our guy, and then they can still get Joe Alt at 7. And then the fact that Joe Alt came on the show on Wednesday. That they wanted Joe Alt on the show, and they is not the Titans. Joe Alt came on the show, and I said to Ian, I said, why, Joe Alt's just randomly doing a 20-minute interview in Nashville? Why would Joe Alt do that? Because the Titans are listening, and it's like, hey, you sure you don't want that on that team? Now, look, I'm not getting mad at the Titans and saying, how dare you take J.C. Latham over Joe Alt? Because it didn't happen. So I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. But like I said, when I teased this segment, I want to go down the rabbit hole here. What would have happened? The Minnesota Vikings can't hold it in any longer. They trade to get J.J. McCarthy. So instead of the way the board shook, it was Williams, Daniels, May, Marvin, McCarthy, Neighbors. What would have happened? And what's crazy is that for the most part, the way fans react if they don't like something is they get mad about it. And a lot of Titan fans were mad about the J.C. Latham pick. And then after a while, they, hear a press conference, and then they convince themselves, because they want to believe that they like their draft pick. And so then they convince themselves that it was a good pick. And that's usually what happens. Is what happened with Kentucky basketball, with their coach. They hated it. And then he had a press conference. They're like, we love him. Go Big Blue. But I don't know if this fan base would have done that if it had meant passing on Joe Alt. One texter says, I would have cried if they took Latham over Alt. I mean, I'm just saying. Like, that would have been something. Like, at that point, if the Titans had done that, and I know Joe brings us up with Fashanu about how there's going to have to be a comparison, but I really don't think so. If Fashanu works, yeah, people will be mad, but I don't think anybody, even me, I don't think anybody here is sitting there going, you could have Fashanu, you took Latham. Even though Fashanu actually does play left tackle. But I'm just saying, if you had done that, and J.C. Latham was in a first ballot Hall of Famer, I mean, these fans would have never forgiven. I mean, it's like, that was how much everybody loved Joe Alt. And then the question is, okay, if Bill Callahan's favorite is J.C. Latham, will they still overrule Bill Callahan? Because they, and again, I don't know exactly who they is, because I don't know exactly who makes the picks for the Titans. I know who gets the credit from the imaginary GMs that send the text messages that say great pick. But I'm kidding. But I'm just telling you, like, I feel like at that point, then do you go against Bill Callahan? 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 1025-106 for the game. Stillman and Company live out at First Horizon Park. Always want to thank the Sounds for having us out here. They'll be here all weekend taking on the Norfolk Tide. And I did see that Jackson Holiday is leading off for Norfolk tonight. They're the AAA affiliate of the Orioles. Jackson Holiday is, I think, the best prospect in all of minor league baseball. So, I mean, I'm just saying, like, come on out to the ball yard this weekend. Of course, the Predators want everybody in their seats tomorrow by 5:45 for the 6 o'clock start. And they are opening the doors early at 3 o'clock, encouraging people to get there early. So if you are able to come early and you want to, swing on by Barrel House. I am a superstitious person. Now, that doesn't mean that I think that, just wear the same lucky shirt and I never have to worry about doing whatever. But I am a superstitious person. And the Predators are 2-0 when Barry Trotz comes on the program during this series. Those happen to be the 2 days that have been on Tuesday, the 2 games, games 2 and game 5. They are obviously 0-3 when Barry Trotz does not come on the program. I asked yesterday, I said, should we reach out to bring Barry Trotz back on? Not to hear his insight, though we do care. And I care of course, Barry Trotz, we hear what he says, but just to keep the mojo going. Barry Trotz will join the program tomorrow at 4:30. You can't screw with the mojo. I was disappointed, Ian, to hear Hal Gill earlier today basically be like, well, I had my routine. So I just ate the same peanut butter sandwich every day before the game. I never worried about the super. I'm like, what? No.
Well, there's a difference. Just because you miss routine doesn't mean you're going to be bad in the game.
Yeah, the Cosmos, though, I believe in. So Barry Trotz will join us tomorrow at 4:30. We'll be live at Bridgestone Arena. The doors open at 3 o'clock. Be there on time. Do or die tomorrow. We'll see you then. The Preds Official Podcast with Max Surs will get you set for game number 6. That's next. Stillman and Company. We'll see you all tomorrow on a game day at 2.